Dun, dun, dun. Pa, 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 pa. Hello, hello, hello. Make sure that we've got that computer tucked away. And hey, we are about ready to start our Art Station Fridays. Is that what we want to call it? Do we want to just call it an Art Station Friday? What do you think? Art Station Friday. Let me check in real quick here and see on social media if you guys are getting this or if I'm just talking to myself. Which is cool. It works. I do that too. I went to pick my kids up the other day at school, and they were like, "Who's that? Who are you?" Okay. Yes, we are live, and it still says 12 Days of Realism, and we need to switch that out to ArtStation Reviews. All right, fair enough. So we are good there. Let's head over into Facebook. Make sure that you guys can see me and you can hear me, and give me a little shout out, a little chat there, and I'll refresh this page and get ourselves moving there. All right, cool. Hey, Bento. Z, Drew. Hey, Michael. Oh, yeah, okay, the audio is coming back through. All right. Hey, Karim, how are you? Hello, Sonia Prasad, King's Line. Hello, Alexis. Great. Okay, somebody has been waiting all week. So, Michael, let me get yours up there. And then here is where they all are. But I also told Artist Awake, that's my crew, about this. And I got three of my boot campers. Now boot campers. I know I gave you barely any notice. Okay. Pete. Andre Mercado says Pete. Andre, what does Pete mean? Is that like code for something? Let's get into this, shall we? All right, so today we want to talk about, we want to look at really just art stations in review, but really the underlining topic, the principal thing that we're kind of discussing and trying to get at is how do you get better, all right? And I've been working on this concept. I've been working on this concept for a long time. But the principal idea, how do we get better as artists? There's a lot of theory, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of different tangents and ways that we can kind of approach this. And a lot of it has to do with you and who you are and all of that. But one of the principal kind of elements at the end of this is how do you evaluate how good you are, right? What is the criteria for saying I've achieved some success? That's kind of the thing that in these ArtStation Fridays, that's the thing I'm most devoted to. Now, there's processes like deep practice. Deep practice is the example that's given in the book Talent Code is of a young girl who's playing the violin, and she plays a part, and then as she encounters a problem, she stops, she works through the problem, and then she starts over at the beginning until she encounters another problem, works through it, starts at the beginning, and the whole step, she's very deep and involved in trying to go. So that's a process, and it's an incredibly valuable process to sit down there and draw, and if you make mistakes, work it, and then draw again. I remember when I was a student, I used to think, well, why would I have to draw it twice, right? I just need to learn how to draw it right the first time. And then that led to not drawing, right? Not in any major way. So that mindset that I had was a screwy mindset. Whereas, who cares how many times? The whole point is you get in and you deep practice, right? That's that's a very fascinating. We do that in the boot camp. It's a very important way to grow. But outside of that, how do you know when you've achieved any level of success? That's what these ArtStation Fridays are all about. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm going through this and looking at it from a couple of very important perspectives, all right? Number one, I'm looking at it from the lens of a professional game artist. That's really these. I mean, I look at concept, I look at game, character, I look at all of those things. I'm looking at it from the lens of professional game artist. Now, if you're looking at it through the lens of professional game artist, things change a little bit, right? It's not necessarily, hey, how's my anatomy? I know a ton of professional game artists who would love to continue to work on their anatomy. I know professional game artists at the top of the top, and you still see anatomy problems, right? Or this thing's not, and they just didn't work through it, or they didn't have time, or they don't know. But the point is that this is a career. And as a career, you have a deliverable. The deliverable is something that exists within, a business relationship, which means that there's a timeline. It has to have some element of profitability to it, for the company, so to speak. And this is the opposite of what we tend to think of as artists, is because as artists, profitability is very far from a concern of ours, because we play the long game. So we'll lose money in the beginning, and by money in the beginning, I mean time. We'll lose time in the beginning, and then ultimately that sets us up for more success later. We know this as artists, but when I'm looking at work here, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, hey, how are you matching this with what you need to get a job in the game industry? Now, you got a ton of different ways to learn this, okay? A ton. And I talk to people who are interested in my bootcamp all the time, and there's places like CGMA, and there's Gnomon, and then there's CG Spectrum, and then there's SCAD, and then there's all these other places, right? And all of these places really operate under the same assumption, which is that you're going to come in and you're going to just, take a class, which means you're going to gather information from somebody, and then you're going to do a couple of simple steps and some rote movement, and then you're going to kind of move on to the next little section, and you're going to, digest some information and move on and digest, and these are all valid ways to do things. But usually in my mind, they're just inefficient, because in the industry, what they really want is proof that you can do X, okay? And so if you're going to be a character artist, for example, do they want to know that you know everything about the human face? Well, what if they're using scan data? What if you're not responsible for the face, and they have somebody who's awesome, and they just need you to go in there and actually manage assets? This is what happened to one of my students, and he got an awesome job. It was a beautiful job, right, at first. And then 3 months into it, he's hating it. He's not comfortable. This is happening, that's happening. He's not quite, sure about this. He's not hating it. He's just not in it. Something's wrong. He's missing some part of the conversation because he's doing more file management, but he's still getting paid quite well for it, and it's significantly better than what he got before. And it was a little hard for him to deal with. But 6 months, he's doing the stuff that he loves. He's working on his own private projects. In a year, he could go get another job somewhere else because he's now bona fide. He's in there, right? There's an absolute path that you're on here. And the biggest problem people make is that they wait to get on the path. They're like, I need to know my anatomy. I need to know this. And the thing is that people aren't looking for masters. That's not the conversation, especially in game arts. They're looking for people who can do the job, who can pivot, who are flexible, who are able to learn, who mesh well with the team, right? Because everybody knows that the software in this industry is going to change in 3 years, right? Substance was definitely operational. Substance Painter and Designer operational 3 years ago. Nowhere near as impactful as it is now. I saw this firsthand with ZBrush. When I was there and I was developing and I was working through all of the, going to the industries, this just absolutely changed everything. And people who didn't adapt, they went. They became extinct. But now, there's a whole resurgence of it. So we all know there's a whole cycle to this conversation. What these people need, and again, professional game artist, what they need is to make sure that you've hit their checklist. So I'm going to look through this, and as I look through this, I'm thinking checklist. Always checklist. That's what's in my mind. So here we are. We're looking at Alina, and it says CG artist. So right off the bat, Alina, I need to know a little bit more about what you want. You say it says CG arts here. I'm going to go to the about. I'm going to go over to your LinkedIn. Okay, and I'm going to evaluate this, and I'm going to be like, okay, so character artist, great, all right. Now, that's awesome. So self-starter, see her portfolio in here. She's IT specialist, CG artist, okay, so she's got some background, she's got some experience. Now I come in here, and notice how what I'm doing right now is kind of a full diagnostic. This is what people do. When they look at your portfolio, this is what they do. They go, and they're looking at this, and in 30 seconds, they're trying to hit at da. All right, so here, we're going to do this with Alina. I looked, I was like, okay, she's got, well, the one thing I didn't look was how long ago. All right, 1 year, 2016, that's technically 2 years, 3 years. Okay, great. Okay, so now we're looking over here. And I'm going to start to evaluate this, and I'm going to hit a couple of checks. Just a couple of things on my check marks. Okay, how does she with anatomy? And now I see a ton of faces, and so this is one of the hardest things to make happen. And so I'm kind of okay with that. So I'm going to kind of skip the anatomy conversation for a second. And what I start to do is I start to look is, what kind of characters is she working on? Stylized, realistic. So there's a little stylized element going on here. And there's some realism, so it shows some range, and there's some environment, and there's some props and all that stuff. But most of her form is all roughly the same. This is what's kind of interesting, is people can kind of sense this. There's a couple of things that are, that are a little bit further along, but otherwise everything's kind of at the same level. And this really helps us understand, whether or not Alina is a candidate for a job or not. Now, she's in and she's working right now, let's say lead character artist, so it's done some children's stuff, done some kind of intern and there's some intern work right in there. Okay, and then some other smaller projects. And so now she's here, and right off the bat, she could be doing this. Okay, right off the bat, she could be doing this. She could be doing this job. I see that she's got some of this technical capacity. But now the conversation becomes, what is really showing me that she can handle this all the way? And this is the conversation where we start to get in and we start to talk about like hireability and whether or not you're going to fit. So if I look over here, I'm not a big fan of these kind of grayscale images here. This is posted a year ago, but for me and my money, I think it's important that you always think brand, and by thinking brand, you always think presentation, and you really work the presentation, which means lighting and all of that stuff. Let's take a look at Eugene. Yes, ArtStation, EOF. All right, now he's got simple little shapes in there. This is true. So let's compare this with Alina. Okay, good forms, looking okay. But now if we come back in here, there's so much that's textured. And then if you look here, this is a very specific, very beautiful kind of render to this as well. Now notice the depth in the eyes and also the eyelashes. So there's no eyelashes on this Alina. And yes, it takes time to do the eyelashes, but once you do eyelashes, then you're good to go. You do one pair and you're going to be in great shape. Okay, so what you do is come back here and hit up the eyelashes. Okay, and so we're looking at Eugene and we're looking to see, because I do this. I look and I see how are other people presenting, and I want to present, as close to as well as they present. Always, I'm using these guys as my spirit animals, so to speak, helping me understand, where things are going in here. Okay, now in this particular case, we can see pretty clearly she's got to go in and she's got to pull it together, eyelashes, work that angle, and then she's got to start to think about the lighting in a little bit more depth. If we come over here to Eugene, there's just a real beautiful quality to the way this is working, so she's going to have to check the material a little bit and get a little bit more work done in there. Okay, now if I come in and I look at this one, I'm not, a big fan of. I don't know. The image is a little small, but I'm a big fan of the image itself. Okay, it's just a little blurry. All right, but I love this image and this attention to detail. But see, if I zoom in here like this, I think you've got chromatic aberration on, which I kind of love too. But I would turn the chromatic aberration off because it kind of screws with the eye. I think, wasn't it Spider-Verse did a lot of chromatic aberration. Okay, this is looking good. But here, what you're missing in this case is a couple of halftones. Not a couple, you're missing a lot of halftones. And then also there's a couple of anatomy things that we've got to be mindful of in terms of just the structure. You never want things to kind of break right there. Always at an angle. So over here, if we look at the muscle needs to get up there a little bit higher. So it bridges that. Raise that muscle up a little bit to bridge that gap. Okay, and then also if I come in and I look at all your faces, there's a general thing that we need to do now. And we see it here with this one, which is there's a certain level of simplicity. And this, I think you'd be better if you do it as a grayscale, by the way. So I would do this as a grayscale, and the texture I'm not sold on, and the lighting, there's no real solid rim light on him, and it's all just full frontal. But a character like this, you need to start to think about how you're going to composite it and how you're going to do something kind of really engaging. And if you've done a lot of work on the eyes and the face, then make sure that you're posting just the face, okay? I'm giving a lot of time here on Alina, and I like to have one person that I really spend a lot of time with in the beginning, and then we'll go faster. So ultimately what I hear and what I see in Alina's work is that she's got the capacity and she can do this, right? And she's been in Artist Awake for a while, so I know she can. But she needs to do something now. All the work has this certain ceiling it stops at. And we need to take one of these models and go a little bit deeper into it. I'm going to take a look at this Spider-Man. So yeah, see, look at this. This is beautiful, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Alina, I know you can do this. This is really good, great work that we've got kind of established. But now I need you to start to look at some of these other guys like Eugene, or some of these other people, and start looking at their presentation and start seeing what you can do to start to level up and start to achieve something along these lines, right? Because now the difference, the gap that you have is you're here, you need to start to be here. And you might be thinking, oh, it's Eugene, and he's been doing this. And sure, absolutely. I get it, but I don't get it. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to go too far back. I mean, Eugene's got some work that's a little older back in here. So start to look and see, what was he doing? What were some of the things that he was doing that were engaging people way back in the day? And we've got to start to think about that and start to present along these lines as well. Okay? And I know you can do this, so here's the deal. Here's the piece of action that you need. I would take this model, Super Mario. Get rid of your chromatic variation, and I would go in and add more detail into the jumper, the coverall, I think is called. It's a little too simple in terms of its planes right now, so I would try to adjust that a little bit. Notice how in here he has a lot of these kind of cross wrinkles, and that I think, and you see a lot more realistic folds kind of going on in there. And here what I do is I see it as just a little too simple. Like this block is too simple, and I don't have any of those folds going on in here. That's the stuff where you need to get that into Marvelous Designer now, and you need to get much, much, much more of this specificity in there. All right, because that's the kind of thing that I think is happening here, is all the work is going deep, but you're right here, and you just got this one level, this one little level, Alina, that you got down here that you just got to drop into. And it's going to mean, probably in this character's case, it's going to mean, a week inside of Marvelous Designer, maybe 2, to make that pretty much the most beautiful clothing you've ever done. You do that, you win. All right? This industry, you know the deal. This industry, you prove it. They don't say, hey, you got a degree, or hey, you took this classes. You just got to prove it, okay? And if I look over here at this guy too, it's the same problem with this guy in terms of the clothing. It's way too simple, and we got to get in and really work that, okay? All right, Alina, I hope that's helpful, and let's head on over to Drew. Oh, and I forgot to point out to people where I was doing this, doing them live on Facebook. And let me make sure everybody's got my page. Of course, my back end, I've got the whole business, whatever that URL is Facebook gives me. And Drew, lead 3D artist, vintage electric. Let's go over, let's learn a little bit about Drew. I don't see a LinkedIn, so I go over into Facebook. Probably not the best place for me to go in and learn about somebody. But let's take a quick look. All right. Okay, miniatures, sculpt, and I'm just gliding through things. Okay. And let's take a look. Do you have something on the blog? No. Okay, great. All right, let's show the screen. Okay. Now, here's what you got to do, my friend. It's one thing and one thing only. You got a lot of work here. None of it's gone deep enough. None of it's gone deep enough, right? Like you've got 2 faces here. This tells me you've got a lot of stuff going on in this. You worked on this face. I know exactly who this is. I love the show, but it's not deep enough. And here's what I mean by deep enough, okay? And this is really important for us to kind of have a conversation about. Like, what does it mean deep enough? So if I look at your I'll get this so it's not in the way of the mic. If I look at your sculpt right now, in fact, let's use my action cam. All right. So if we look at your sculpt in terms of the brow and all of that stuff, I can see frontal eminence. I can see the external angular process of the frontal bone. I can see the superciliary arch, sort of. I can see the glabella, sort of. All right. But now what you got to do to start to take it to the next level is you got to get in here and you got to see, notice how this supraorbital margin comes in and it goes underneath the superciliary arch. Okay. Notice how there's this form that's kind of moving down. Like, what is the specific nature of the glabella? Notice how it comes straight down, and there's this kind of really interesting pyramid shape right there. It's really odd, right? Now you got to get into this area, and you got to start to dissect this area and understand what's the plane, how it goes like this, and then this, and how this happens, and what are the lines, and what are the movements, okay? And then we come in here, and you got to say, okay, well, now the next thing is understanding, like, this was a big evolution for me, was understanding this external angular process of the frontal bone, how this is actually kind of a rounded shape mixing up into this larger shape here, okay? Do we have a clear sense of that in your work? Because that, if I'm not accurate. Let's go there. Raise that a little bit. Let me just get the orbit of the eye a little indicated in there. Okay. Ba-ba. Ba-ba. Okay. That's the next step, and you can barely see that, so let's head over to this screen. Now you can see it a little better. Getting in there and really understanding like how this form moves, you know, is what you've got to do now. That's kind of the next step. So Drew, if I was you and you have the capacity, I would head over to my class on that, because it's exactly what we're doing. It's one of the things that we're doing. But if you come in here and you go to the character arts face and you go into, nope, sorry, I don't mean to take you right to the checkout page. Ugh. There we go. Learn more. All right, so it'll tell you a little bit more about what it does. There's a webinar in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there for you guys to see and whatnot. But this would be the thing where what you need to do now is focus on getting to that next level in terms of understanding the halftone, specifically of what happens as this moves down underneath, okay? That's going to make a big difference in your work, I think, and help you get to that kind of next level. Let's look at this screen. And you just got to focus on that, and probably focus on one head for a month. I'd probably give it a month, and tell me what you think about that. Does that sound crazy to you? But there you go. Yes, and great. Drew just finished the 12 days. So good. Now you just got to go deeper, though, because it's a lot more in 12 days. Okay. Michael. All right. So I'm doing all the boot campers first. Shajan? Okay, good. I'm glad you're here. I love this, but there's some problems. And that's what we got to talk about. So it's so close, but what is it missing? That's the dilemma that we have, and that we got to work through here real quick. So I was looking at this and trying to understand what is bugging me. So give me 2 seconds. Because this is one of the views that's getting me. Mostly what it is this is very simple, but then bumpy as well. And I'm not sold on how this works. So now the next step for me, for you, is getting in and really, like, see, this is a very linear line. And so I'm not sold on the way the skin is fitting to the face yet. This is beautiful. Love Simon. Simon actually teaches in the boot camp. And I already told you about these pieces. I love these pieces, and I love your texturing process for it. This is very cool, very awesome. But in terms of this, something's missing, right? Do you know what's missing? Can you say, or can anybody here say what's missing? Maybe you guys look at this and you're like, Ryan, you're an asshole. I get it. I am. But what do you think is missing? Hey, Christian, how you doing? Hey, Alexander. I'm pausing here for a second because I want to see what you guys think, and then I'm going to check over on YouTube and see if anybody's got comments there. Hey, Six Syndicate, Milan, Robert. I did. You look like I do look like another person. Robert posted that about 20 minutes ago. Sorry, Robert. Yeah, like I said, my kids when I went to pick them up because we live right down from the school. They're like they just couldn't stop staring. It's pretty funny, really funny. And then my neighbors thought there was a stranger with my wife, which is actually kind of cool. What are we missing here, guys? What is our gentleman missing? Add a bit of grain, play with compositing. Could it be lighting? You know, it could be. If it's lighting, then we could come in and say, we could actually fake some of that. I'm gonna spend a moment here. Now, the metal looks amazing. The texture on the metal looks amazing. The fur, that looks amazing. All right, so I'm super excited about all of that stuff. But I'm not entirely sold on a couple of things. And, you know, for me, I have to figure these things out. Like, it's detective work. What's wrong? I don't know. So a lot of times when I'm working with student work, I know, and then sometimes I don't know. And so I'm going to try big, huge movements. Not big, huge movements, but I'm going to try some bigger movements first. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, no, I don't want to deal with that just yet. Okay. Do we want a rim light? No, I don't like the darken. Why did I like darken? Okay, yeah, let's try that, but I need to adjust. Magic wand. No, that's boring as hell. So, it's here. It's a tough one. Ah, okay, I see it in a couple of places. All right, cool. Takes a while sometimes, but here we go. Here's my thinking, my friend. Notice the manicuredness. You're missing flyaways. You're especially missing the little hairs that go like that. So that's too clean. The hair down here, this is awesome. Great job. The lines that are moving here are a little too linear. Make sure you cut those a little bit. The line that's moving here, bring that out and those folds out here into this a little bit. And then also here, I want to see, because what I see is I see a plane, but I don't see any drop, like any lines, and I just see the bumps. So what I really want is to get in there and see some of these lines moving. So I'm going to come in and see if I can't paint this. There we go. And what am I doing? A layer. Let's set that to... Oh, the flow is it. There we go. And let's set this a little darker. There we go. That's what I needed. Okay. I'm going to move this microphone and I'm just going to screw with this image for a little bit. Yeah, let's get that color. Changing those pores because I'm not comfortable with the way those pores are. Here they're going to be a little bit more flattened because of the way the skin behaves. It flattens these normal folds. I'd love to get in and see like a little bit more wrinkling going on. Let's get some highlights. Okay, this is very rough. But ultimately what it's designed to do is just say, hey, does it look a little better? Even as rough, as silly and rough as that is, if we go in there and you just put a little bit more line detail in it, because I think that's all that's bugging me, is that it just doesn't have the attention and possibly the depth in certain areas that I really want it to have. Lower that opacity. Okay. And what I'm really getting at too is see that trough above the nose. You know, it's something's up with that. I'm not convinced in that. Now, of course, I don't have your reference, so I'm not 100%. But from this distance, when I go on, off, and I got a little bit more work to do to adjust, you know, I feel a little better about it. Let's move that up a bit. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. I think it's some line work that you need to do, and then I'm also not entirely sold on the shading of the hair here. It's just a little white. So I'm wondering if rim light will do it or what will do it. Let's turn the, there we go. Let's lower the opacity. There we go. And then, hey, what would it look like if we went more cinematic? I'm not sure. I would darken that background, and then I would find a way to get a nice rim light on that. To see if something could kind of work. To pull some attention there, I don't know. But I'm not entirely sold on the lighting that you got going on with that. And definitely the hair could use to be darker in that center area. Because this is what's happening. Good. See, I'm working through the problems. My attention goes right here. Does anybody else's attention go right up in here? Because there's so much contrast. Right? So whether it's accurate or not, you got to address it. Because compositionally, my attention comes up here and then it comes down into this area. And so if we start to take that down a little bit, it's like, okay, now suddenly all of my attention comes down here into the eye, because the contrast between here and here is less, but beautiful. So if you go in and you just tamp down that hair, I think you'll be in actually pretty good shape. And so I'll usually do this in my boot camps. I come in and we're working through a problem, because you're always working through problems. That's the nature of this. Working through problems. Nobody's got the right answer. And often in the process of a critique, I'll get answers. They're not guaranteed. But now, and then we work and we do a hypothesis. We just do a hypothesis check, okay? We're scientists at the end of the day. We're looking at this and we're like, hey, I did a couple of things here. Does that work, right? This is part of the whole, let me move this a little closer. This is part of the whole deep practice idea, which is you're working through problems and then go back and start from the beginning to see, what really helps, okay? So here in this particular instance, I went in and did a whole bunch of work on the face because I was like, something's not in the face, but then I go and I adjust the hair and look at this now. I've completely undid that change that I made before. So this is the source. This is the first change I made, and I added a whole bunch. I spent a bunch of time talking about hair, or not hair, but details. Okay, something was working here, something is not working here. I feel it here, but I've started to think it's just the hair. So as soon as I tamp down the hair, doesn't that start to read a little better? The face starts to become more important. And if we were to probably come in and if we were to just put a little bit of an overlay in that. I like overlay. And then tamp that down. And then we'll move that around a little bit. Maybe we'll move it right to that eye. Right there. Yeah. All right. Now we have a focus. And we have something very powerful about this, and our eye is going right there as opposed to this, which is the original. And you see how that subtle shift, now all of a sudden your attention goes to the top of the head, which is what I kept looking at. I'm like, why the hell am I looking at his hair? It's because of the contrast, right? So tamp down the contrast at the top and lighten up the contrast around that eye, and now suddenly you got a Rembrandt, dude. Great work. All right, hope that was useful. See ya. Okay, Drew, we talked about Drew. Christian, glad you are here. It has been a long time. All right, as I said, I'm going through my boot campers first, guys, or the people in Artist Awake. Super awesome, Christian. Now, I'm going to evaluate the whole package here. I don't have your LinkedIn. I really want your LinkedIn. 3D character artist, okay, fair enough. But I want your LinkedIn. Okay, now when I'm looking at this, I see drawings. I don't want to see the drawings. I know people are 50-50 on this, but I don't want to see the drawings. Because I want to see 3D character art. Now, here's the problem. Here's the thing, okay? When you are giving people work to look at, you're giving them an into you, and this is something we learn in marketing. You want to limit the reasons for somebody to say no. Limit the reasons for somebody to say no. All right, so that's why, for example, if you go to a landing page, you can just take my stuff. For example, if you come over here, I'm going to give you a little marketing kind of discussion, because I think marketing is important for us as artists. So if you come in over here to my page, you'll see, you've got a webinar, you got something where people can get value, and, you get all of these different things. But if you come into the webinar page, I don't know exactly where this will redirect. But notice how there's no menu at the top. There's nothing you can do on this page except for enter your email, because that's what this page is all about. It's about, you're either going to enter your email and continue in this conversation and let me know that you're interested in the class, or you're not. And if you're not, then I don't, there's no reason for you to do anything except for to exit out of this page. So when I'm looking at work here, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is about hiring. So you'd want as few reasons, as few tangents as possible for people to go in. So the drawings, not so much, right? And this is a drawing from 3 years ago. There's no way in hell I'll share a drawing of mine 3 years ago. So don't share yours. And somebody might have a different opinion on that. I get it, but I also don't care. The most important thing is that you focus your attention on what really is going to get somebody's attention. Okay, so you came in and this was your character. Now, where is this thing with substance and all of that stuff? I want this guy finished. All right, this guy here, Thanos. These are good, okay, but you're missing the half tones. Okay, and that's what's really important. You even see it with that that image on the side, the ad, right? There's half tones missing there as well. This is one of the issues we're always kind of dealing with. And so you've got the understanding of anatomy. Let's look at this calendar. So, all right. So you've got a sense of anatomy, but what we're missing here, because this is a more stylized representation of anatomy, what we're missing here is a stronger representation of exactly what that glabella does. Okay, look in the inner corner of this eye, and then look at the inner corner of your eye. Where's the anatomy there? Can you see the structure or no? Right? You've lost it. But now if we go over and we look at Thanos, let's do a little dissection, a little look at Thanos and see if we can kind of find it. Now he has a lot of fat in his brow. There's a whole fat pad there. Oh my God, that's the Thanos I want to sculpt. Yes. That would be the Thanos I would sculpt. All right. Now, it's all here. I assure you it's here. The guys who did this, they know their stuff. I'm going to try to find the glabella. I'm going to try to find this form right here. Okay, so as I'm going through and I'm going to try to find this form, it's right, you see the corner of the eye, it's right in here. Oh man, it's a tough one. His brow is really moved down. Let's try one more view. We're like, I'm going to find it, and then I'm like, I'm not going to find it. So tough. Okay, there you go. Yeah, this is a tough one. I should sculpt it just to be on the, just to have a demonstration of it. But ultimately, let's look at it this way. Instead of us looking for the glabella, what we really need to do is find the whole side of the nose. That's the first conversation I want to have. Before we start looking for glabella, where's the side plane of the nose? Okay, that forms the whole side plane of the whole wall of the eye. Okay, and then it comes in and we get our down plane for the brow, right? But this kind of deeper socket and how this is moving, in to then for us to be able to have the orbit of the eye and all these other things kind of show up. How is this area established? Let's go back into your piece here. Notice what you chose to do was you chose to kind of establish a ramp right into that eye. Okay, but what we really need to do, and this eyelid right here goes right into the wall of that as well. And this is the stuff where it's like small little changes of the plane. You got to put that eye up in there, and you got to go in and find that caruncula, give that a little bit of space all the way around, and then after you've got that little bit of space, then you build and you connect that into the side. Okay, so we need to go in and we need to just kind of push this a little bit more, right? And work that brow where this is a little not so pushed down and covering it, but he's got a lot of fat there, and that's the way you need to think about that. And you see how this is very straight. But what we're dealing with here is a very fat brow. So this is going to come in and have a lot of fat in there to kind of help move that around, and this is the same thing in here. You've got a lot of some sculptural angles in there. Like that brow is not a small, thin brow. Looking at that from a side view, you can see the fat really pulling in, right? There's just a ton of it in there. So make sure that you've got proper depth from here to here to get that indicated. And really get in and start to establish, where did we go? Here we go. A couple more of these little points of these little plane changes. So let's look and see if I can give you any more plane changes. Yeah, we can do that. And that's not bad. Let me close out of that so I'm not getting confused. Okay, good. All right, look at this nose, the alar cartilage. Look at the lift of that alar cartilage. Super important. Coming into the nostril. Okay, now let's evaluate yours. You could have more of that, like this just comes straight down. You could have more of that lip and the bulb of the nose in there to help you establish a more unique or more specific nose, so to speak. All right. Now, the other thing I want you to notice is how your lips come in, and notice how there's this kind of weak form right here. It's like it's not very clear. This is a very interesting line or element, right? But it comes from the muscle fibers in the mouth. So in the there's a nodule, and the muscle fibers come like this. And so right in between here, you got a line that comes in and goes just like that. Okay, that line is what's a little bit weak in yours. And what you need is to take that line and move it up, and get it a little bit so that these forms are a little cleaner coming in, and this form is a little cleaner going up. Then the other thing to notice is how they've put this marionette line in and then drop this down. So they've got a very strong, this is a very important line as well for anybody, to humanoid characters basically. He's dropping in this kind of marionette line on the side. And what this really does, the main purpose of the marionette line is it establishes the upper lip as dominant. You see how that pushes that in a little bit from this view? And so that upper lip becomes the dominant form over the lower lip. Cool? So in your case, you've got that sort of, but you ended up treating these lips a little bit. I just think that they just need to get a little bit more structure in there, a little bit simpler, cleaner. Right now, that's just a little wonky. All right, and then also you notice how the form here goes like this, and then this form goes like this, and then this form goes like that, and that form goes. So in terms of how these forms line up, that's the next thing that I'll evaluate and see if I can establish. But if we're looking here, I'm seeing a pretty consistent movement of these, and not a ton of crazy form changes. You know, so that is a pretty, especially here, you see it here. It's pretty consistent chin. So make sure you're getting those lines to be a little bit more consistent. Here you can really see like this little space and then the little orbit area in there for the side of the nose. And a little bit more clarity in the side of the nose. A little bit more clarity in the bulb of the nose is ultimately what I'm asking for. A little bit more clarity in, here, I'll do it on yours. Hold on. A little more clarity in the bulb of the nose, a little bit more clarity in these lips, a little bit more clarity in the lower lip, a little bit more clarity in the inner corner of the eye is going to do a lot. And then don't forget this neck area. You know, even though this guy's like beefy, we got to be very careful of that neck going the wrong direction. You know, he still has a neck, but in yours, he's losing the neck. So always remember that the neck is a plane, and then the shoulder muscles come in. It's always like that. It's always plane and then shoulder, and then we go from there. And then the head starts and sits on top of that. But this is important, and what most people do, and I've probably told you this before, most people will they just start sculpting the trapezius, and then next thing you know, they're like, oh yeah, well there you go, the guy has no neck. Who else has no neck? Your favorite Star Trek characters, they got no neck. This right here, that's what's happening to your neck. And it's because we've lost the transition from the neck to the muscles. And the way that you got to think about the trapezius, which is the back, and that's kind of what we're seeing right there, is the trapezius has 3 different sections. Okay, if we were to just Google this really quick. Trapezius. Okay. Now, it's not apparent from here, but the trapezius has 3 different sections. There's what they call the ascending. I can't remember if this is the ascending or not, but just bear with me. If I get it wrong, you know, so what? The ascending portion, the descending portion, I think this is actually the ascending portion. So you get one part that's heading up, you get one part that's heading down, and you get one part that's heading left and right to the side. So it's called the descending, the transversal, and the ascending. Those are the different directions or elements of the trapezius. So when we think about that, you just treat them as separate pieces. So there is the descending portion, and then that's meeting the transversal portion, and the transversal portion is meeting the ascending portion. You do those 3, you're gold, dude. You'll get the neck in 3 seconds flat. So great work, but here's the biggest thing I need you to do, Christian, and this is super, super important. Get these damn things into substance and into marmoset and finished. Can you finish this and put it into marmoset? I'm sitting here and I'm looking. Adrian, how are you? I'm looking for your response. Now, you know how I feel about this. You were in the boot camp, and I had this conversation with you. When do I get your character in marmoset? Textured. Because you're stuck in digital sculpting land. No problem. I love digital sculpting. I am a digital sculptor. Can you get this thing into marmoset? All right. Now, I'm looking right here at your boot camp, and like, even if all you did was Z-remesh all of this stuff, that's fine. Who cares? You know, not me. I care that it's not in marmoset. It's not a finished character at this point, and I don't want that to happen with this one. So that's what you got to do. Okay, cool. All right. He said cool. Okay, great. So I hit everybody up who was in Artist Awake. Let's take a quick look over here, and I'll start with Mike Red, and then I'll go through the rest of these. Mike, digital artist, Peru. What's the focus, Mike? That's what I want to know now, right? And so always when I'm doing this, again, the primary thing for me is I try to have a lens to look at this through. Now, I'm going to make some assumptions because of the nature of this. There's a delay when I talk to you, so you don't hear everything. And while I'm looking and thinking, I'm going to go from there. But Michael replied. Is this Mike? Is this the Mike? Okay. There we go. All right, let me check YouTube, see if there's anything I need to address there. Michael, I'm finishing 12 days. I'll go deeper, yes. Any SSS. Don't know what that means. Max 3D, any SSS. But you might have been referring to something 20 minutes ago. So sorry, I don't have the Facebook or the YouTube comments up right there. All right, this is looking really cool. I like what we're kind of seeing. You know, in terms of, like, you're definitely into stylized, you're definitely working the angle. So here's the question that we have now, which is, you know, what's your ultimate goal? All right, so if your ultimate goal is to get more awareness to you, that's one direction we could go. If your ultimate goal is to work at Blizzard, that's different than getting awareness to you, right? And what I'm going to do right now, just so you have a sense of my own thinking on that, is there's two different people you could kind of evaluate along these lines. Like what Pablo Gomez has done is very, very awesome. Okay, and Pablo Gomez's his approach and his deal is not that he wants to necessarily work at Blizzard, right? What Pablo wants to do is get out there and share his love, and he has a totally different job than ZBrush. That's not how he butters his bread. He wants to get out there and try things and experiment and share all of that stuff, right? This is all stuff I used to do, 15 years ago. Working for Pixelogic and all of that. And, now today you see somebody like Pablo going out here and he's just killing it, right? Every time this guy posts something, it's absolutely fun. And he's thinking about ways to engage the community and all of that stuff. And then the other side of this conversation is Leticia Gillett. And Leticia Gillett, she wants to work at Disney, at DreamWorks, at Blizzard. She wants to work stylized. And I've got a great podcast with her. It's my very first episode, actually, of the Game Artist podcast, even though she's not a game artist anymore. You can see it over here on iTunes. I think we got about 40 episodes or so up. There's a lot more when we get into season 2. So she's not interested in getting attention to her necessarily. Not in the same way that, say, Pablo might be with ZBrush Guides, where he's sharing information. Leticia is interested in creating work that gets attention, the final pieces. Okay, so which one of these kind of fits your life, Michael? Okay, Christian's saying great. Okay, and Michael, I'll wait because there's a little delay. But I want to know which one you are. Are you Pablo or are you Leticia? Leticia. Yeah. All right, like you could be a Leticia, you could be Irene Weenie on Instagram, right? There's a bunch of different directions when it comes to this. But when it comes to this, now this is a different set of rules. Okay, that's why I wanted to kind of be very clear about this. So the rules here are that it's always about making this thing look good and having a story. That's really, really, really important. And so one of the strategies that Leticia did was she went out and she met different people that were creating concepts that she was attracted to, and she actually just built their concepts. Not just, it's a lot of damn work, but she built like these guys right in here. This was somebody else's concept that she was doing, Brittany Lee, and she looked at the concept and she's like, I think that's the concept right there. Well, I can't tell which one right now, and then she modeled the whole thing to kind of give it a sense of stuff, and so there's a beautiful story to this. So that's going to be what's really important for you, is the whole way through this, we're going to be very interested in story. Now, the other element of this, as you get into this, is that in terms of stylized, the conversation has a lot to do with straights and curves, and these are really the wrong colors. Straights and the different elements of curve, like there's a curve in here. Notice the curve there and how that elbow is broken. Notice how this is straight and really hardcore there. This is very soft. This is, of course, you already are fluent in this. This is what your deal is. Now, if I look at this, there's a couple of things that really attract me right off the bat. I definitely say this attracts me. And, you're pulling from Loesch, so there we go, right? She's really, really good. Now, in terms of your 3D lighting of this, though, there is something very important that you kind of got to get in and start to do. And I would say Leticia is really good at lighting, not necessarily her strongest suit, because obviously texture or sculpting is. But when I look at this, there's a couple of things that I'm not entirely sold at. And you need to get into the light, and you need to work on it to maybe make it a little bit more... I like change it. Like, where is this lit in, actually? It's in Blender. In Blender, do the lights have like a quadratic or a way that you can change the fall off? Because in Maya, I would set this to quadratic to kind of change the tone a little bit. And then the other thing I would do is post-process this to really make this image work and to get out of the 3D space. Because as we are right now, it's very 3D, and you've got to put the illustrative aspect back into it. That's a kind of really important thing for us. And so that would mean getting in and let's just switch over to the big screen. Let's say, no, I'm not going to do any of that right now. But let me check. Did you respond? Oops. Okay. Yeah, you got to get in and work the angle because this is very 3D. And the way this light is behaving, I really want you to get in and kind of adjust the light to make it a little bit more compositional in terms of becoming an illustration. All right, that's going to be really important for you to kind of take advantage of that. And then, so that one really gets me. This one really gets me, but the lighting really, this is not good lighting. Do you see how the spotlights are like blowing out to high hell right there? That's going to be a problem. So you need to really get clear about the light and make sure that that's going to behave properly because they're going to judge this based on that. So get a little bit better in the lighting, you'll be in better shape there. But the forms and the shadow and the rest of it, the composition looks really good. Okay, this looks really good. I'm really excited about this image. I don't have a ton that I would say, change in here. I think this has a lot of value to it. Let's compare it with the original. Yeah, the only thing I might do is notice how all of your forms are very curved. Lots of curves in this. So now if we come back over here into this one, now what are the different curves? How can we handle the different angles? Notice how this comes in and then it flattens out and then it comes in and actually it rounds and then it kind of flattens and then flattens, right? And then this is kind of flat to flat. All right, that's kind of valuable. Look for the flat there, look there, and then there's a little bump right in there. That's going to be if you put that in, it'll help. Notice the bump, but then this isn't really clean. Notice that there's a little flat spot right there, and then this is flat, and then that, and then it gets nice. And then also when we look at this, notice the kind of, the way that form breaks. Okay, this is total nitpicking, but that's what really still starts to create the character of this. So notice how this is a little it's not as weak or it's not as strong as what we had in there. It's just to kind of go in and harden a couple of things. Come in here and put a little bit of an elbow in there. That might be really nice to help sell this. Get that second bump right in there. Not just super round, but super round and then flatten it. And then in here, really flatten that stuff. Get a hard edge as it moves in here, because that's really how they establish the character of it. Now, this looks like it's just kind of pulled in and rounded out. So we're missing the kind of beautiful chunkiness and then just a little bit of the harder edges. Okay, now as we come in here and you look at these different parts, that whole thing, because really what we're looking at here, Michael, the primary thing that we're seeing is you can do this job, but you're treating the form a little too cavalierly right now. You need to get in and like each curve you need to start to think about and start to craft. Because even though, the concept artists just kind of like, they build it into them to kind of a curve here, a straight there, around here. And these little hooks mean a lot. This is a lesson I learned from Mike DeFeo. And it's really important to have those there. And really think through all of these little tiny plane changes. Cool? All right. Thanks, Michael. And we're off. Okay. I'm looking here at all of these, and I'll find the oldest, and we have been live for an hour. I'm going to load them up so I can just go rapid fire. Okay, and the primary thing that I'm going to be doing, the thing that's going to be on my mind, hey Tariq, did I get Umar already? Well, don't matter. Almost missed you. Ugh. Lots, guys. Good. All right, so let's see what we can do in terms of just getting you instructions. Okay, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do here in just a second. Okay, there you go. That's a lot of stuff, huh? Okay. Sorry, going back and forth. Thanks, Alexander. Yeah. Okay, good. Glad, Michael. Okay. All right, here's the deal. All right, I got a lot of people to look at. All right, but here's my thing. Okay, now I am in the game art boot camp is like the thing that I'm really, it's kind of the core of what I do right now, because my focus is on growing artists, and this is the way in which when you grow, and you get that job, right? You know, it just changes the whole conversation. Like Matthew Gilmeister, who'd been an intern for a while, and then, you know, he gets a job at High Res Studios. Okay. Sometimes, you know, your life can change a little bit. Sometimes it can change a lot, right? Like one of my early students, Larry, who got a job at EA San Diego. And, you know, before that, you know, he's living in the family home. He's doing a bunch of stuff, freelance. Now he's done. He's set. He has that job, and it's a job that just grows into another job that grows into another job that grows into another job. He'd been trying for a while, and it took a lot of hard work, man. I saw few people work as hard as Larry worked, right? And I'll tell you that right now, it takes the work, right? But you work, you want to do that work with me, you come into the boot camp. That's where that happens. In this session today, what I want to do is I want to look through this. I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to say, are you a candidate for the job? And if you're not, I'm going to say why, right? That's going to be the kind of key component. Okay, now you might be more of an artist in here, and so then I might shift if you're not necessarily into games. But if we're looking right now, we're looking at student, we're looking at Allison, I'm sorry. Let me call you Anthony. How's that, Anthony? Sorry, my friend. Student character artist. As we come in here, number one, I really hate these, but some people, like Melissa, loves these. Okay, now I'm going to look at this, and the primary thing I'm looking at is I'm like, okay, so here's a finished piece. Okay, but you're a character artist. You can model, that's good, okay? But now if I look in here and I see the face, okay? In the face, I don't see eyes. Why do you not have eyes? You must have eyes, okay? And that's over a year ago, Anthony. What have you been doing in a year that you have not put eyes on that? Okay, you put eyes on this model, but then you didn't put eyes on that model. Put those eyes on that model and repost that, okay? Don't screw with me here. Make that happen. Now, a year ago, you did this. This looks like it's good. You've kind of gone through these motions, and this is absolutely fantastic, the way in which you've kind of expressed this. You've got a couple of anatomical misunderstandings. You've got to really get in and get a stronger sense of that side of the nose and how that works. Make sure that you understand where it's the difference between the zygomatic and the cheek fat. But beyond that, you're in great shape. You know, this glabella, you might need a little more form there, but, you know, that changes with different racial types and just, you know, different people. So you've got marvelous. That's good. This is a little soft and marvelous, and your feminine proportions are a little bit like, we need to start to think, you know, are you doing, is this, what kind of realism are you working at? Because the second head is supposed to be where the nipples are. So the nipples aren't there, which means the nipples have dropped, and the, you know, breasts do drop. So now that's starting to tell you something different about the character, right? And now if we come in here and we try to find where's the halfway point, yeah, about right there. So and then the halfway point. I think your legs are in okay shape. Yeah, there you go. It all has to do with this area is where you're confused. Okay, I got to get in there and probably raise the rib cage a little bit. And if the rib cage is this wide, then you need to expand the shoulders. So chances are you probably got to bring the rib cage in a little bit, make it a little smaller. You know, I always have a hard time with this intellectually, a little bit morally, right? Because women's bodies are one of the most policed or judged things out there, but in games it's just a huge part of games, right? So do your best. You don't, you know, try to keep her with some internal organs in there, but you do need to raise the breasts, And in raising the breasts, maybe raise the neck a little bit, the shoulders a tiny bit, and then bring the rib cage in a little bit to give it a little bit more oomph, and I think you'll be in better shape. She'll sit there and she'll read a little bit better. This is a good candidate, but I don't see this in Marmoset. And I need to see this in Marmoset. And I don't need to see this. Please delete this image. The background's not important. Background's not important. What I need is, and this is what you got to do. You got to go and look and say, what are character artists doing? How are they posting? What did they show? So you come over here. Here's somebody who worked on a film, and let's see. How is he showing off his characters? Face. This is not a good example. Let's look at this one. There you go. Straight on, simple, and the back. So get in there and let's go back to your piece. Come on. And I need a better image like this, but then the other thing is you got to raise the breasts, and the other thing is we've got to really work on the skin because it's not. I'm not sold on that skin in terms of the real-time render. If this is the real-time render, then your lighting isn't working for me, and so you got to work on your lighting. You got to work on the breasts, and then get back to that other model, and then keep making more of these. Okay, good stuff. Ricardo, how are you? All right, digital sculptor, I would assume, right, Ricardo? Then the primary thing that we've got to evaluate and we've got to look at, one is timing 2 months ago. Okay, so I'm not sold on this. And why am I not sold on that? Something is wrong with this image. All right. I really want you, Ricardo, to work on your rendering. That's going to be one of the things that levels you up almost more than anything else. Especially we look at this, you know, like this is a really cool sculpt that you've got, but we've got to work on the rendering. And then also the other thing that we've got to work on, you got to get back into your anatomy. But here's the thing that you got to think about, Ricardo. You got to get beyond just the muscles. And I see, you know, you're going to get there. You're going to get there one way or another. But here's the problem I see. You've got this deltoid, and you got it quite well delineated, right? You have the three different portions. You've got the scapula, the acromial, and the deltoid, or the clavicular, sorry. I have that reversed. You have the clavicular, the acromium, the scapula. Okay, now in terms of the pectoralis, you got a big-ass shelf right there. I'm not sold on that, but you have the part that's going from the clavicular portion, the sternal portion, and then the rib portion. Okay, when we come over here into you got the muscle, the muscle, the muscle. But then when I come down into this area, it's like, what is that? That looks like that's actually the humerus itself jutting out. Okay, but what you got to do is get in there and start to evaluate this as, you know, in terms of some more artistic structural understanding. Get a bit more of a box in there. Okay, start to move away from the anatomy, the muscle anatomy a little bit, and start to put some of the more specific artistic shapes into this. And so let's go here. Yeah, that just needs to become more of a box, like right there to right there. There we go. Pull that down. Okay, and don't forget your wrists. Make sure that you model wrists and you understand wrists. Okay, you're so close to getting all of this stuff that the key thing is going to be going in there and really looking at the connector points. So wrists, knees, shoulders, those are going to be the things that really level up your work. Okay, because this is, again, really good, very solid work you've got going on in here. You're definitely going to, you know, make this happen with miniatures, with any of these things, but you got to get your anatomy locked down in terms of the connective tissue, the connective parts. Okay, now if we come back into this one, what is bugging me? Number one thing that is bugging me is the eyes are too white. So always with eyes, it's never really known, but you have to lower the white. They're not white. I bet as soon as I pull out, this will look better. Okay. Okay, so that definitely looks better. Maybe a little too much. Lower the color of that. Then the other thing is you need to get in and look and evaluate whether or not there needs to be like the spatial difference. You see how this side is different than this side? That's something that you really need to come to terms with, because my assumption would be that they're either equal sides or something else is going to change. So if I come in and let's do, yeah, and then bop, bop, right? Now, the other thing that we got to do on top of that is this lighting is getting very blown out in these areas. So I don't know what you're using for the renderer. You got to get in there and you got to really work your specular. And if you're in Marmoset or any, I always recommend that you do a light diffuse specular and then you do more nuanced specular. But your specular is the other thing that's going to kill you here. And there's no subsurface scattering and any of that stuff. So, and then also in this hair, which I think looks painted, this is going to kill you. Go in there and get some variety and some movement, and hair is always doing different things, so swap that up a little bit and give it a little bit more life. Okay? All right, Ricardo. Cool. Ivan. Game artist, open and freelance. Good. All right, and this is great. Fantastic work that you've got here. No big comments here. Careful of posting the stuff from Tim. Nothing wrong with it. It's just you know, you don't want that to be your portfolio. That's okay. Not sure. So I see a lot of student work here. Specular I'm okay with on this. Overall, it's not there. It's missing a level of authenticity a little bit. And I think it's the chroma that's getting me. Okay, so let's do a saturation layer. All right, now notice how red this is. Is there anywhere where that could be less red? Or there could be more variety in it? Maybe it was like that in the beginning. Kind of doubt it's like that now. Okay, so that took the saturation down a little bit. Let's do an overlay. And let's bleach some of this out. Specifically, I'm going to bleach out the top, because it's probably getting some sun. You know, and then there's probably some wear in here, especially in this area, in the grip. There's going to be some movement. Let's say, is soft light better? Yeah, soft light's going to work okay. No. There we go. All right, so I think that's actually all I want to do. So there we go. Okay. Super simple, my friend. Head over into Substance, get yourself into a positional gradient, either some dirt on the top, something of that nature, and you just gotta uh, desaturate and lighten some areas so that this has a little bit more variety in there, because as it is, this just strikes me as like this, you just got it off Kmart, but it came pre-distressed. I don't think you can get these on Kmart anymore. So if it's this distressed, that means that the color has probably been distressed as well. So distress the color to some extent. Does that make sense? And then over here, this is good, but finish it. Get this thing into Marmoset. Get this thing into Marmoset. Light this. If you have the time to build this and you have the time to build another one, then yeah, get these things. Oh, you're doing it with Dylan, so you're trying to work on more stylized. But if you want to be a game artist, I would still get these into Marmoset. In fact, that's exactly what I would do. Yeah. Get these guys into Marmoset. If you're a game artist, get these into Marmoset, and then you got to think like Blair Armitage. It's going to be huge, and a huge boon to have these things sitting there actually produced. That's going to be my thing. So, all right, you're there. You're really close, my friend. Real close. All right. Angel or Angel? What are we doing here? Freelance and painting and games. Well, it depends on what your goal is here. Let's go with this one because Facebook's going to love me. Let's go with this one. 2 hours ago. Okay. So what is the goal here? That I'm going to need to know, because this looks really good, really solid. I got no problems, no questions. So let me review. So let me check to see if you're live with me here. 80% of reviews are finish it, probably. Alexander saying 80% are get your butt into Marmoset. Yeah, well, it's finish it is really what my biggest review is. I love this, though. I don't see anything that I think we need to really get into. So if we look at this and I look at your likes, I'm going to hold this, Angel, because it's more of a marketing question I think we've got. Daniel, let's head over here. Daniel, character artist TD. Sweet. Let's take a look. Okay. Did you work with Maria off Maria's? That looks really nice. Good job on that. All right. This was 10 months ago. Okay, so this is going to provide our growth. It's very nice. Great job. Great job. Perfect. Let's see. Yeah. Getting a little light in there. Nice eyelashes. Great subsurface. You got your teeth. Hair. If anything, the eye area is just a little not there. It's a little... I think you maybe need to lighten the eyelid. Not the eyelid. Yeah, the eyelid. But you are so there. Where's my pen? There it is. It's very dark in there. little bit of lightning, a little less. There we go. So it's not so dead. And your specular. Specular is pretty broad. Are you using cavity on that? Raw render final image. So I think the last thing that might add a little bit is if our specular, you get a little bit more in there. So in Marmoset, what we would do, let me load up Marmoset. I think I have one file that's pretty much right there. All right, it's going to take a second to load that. All right, so Daniel, I think what is going on with this? Oh, there it is. You know how I can never figure out how to get the ArtStation sidebar up and down. Always drives me nuts. All right, so Daniel, this is looking really good. I think the work is great. The quality that you've got is going good. So here's a couple of things that I think might be very important as you go, because you're also growing, right? Like the difference between this and the one that you have where you spent more time on it is like this is beautiful. The work that you did here is absolutely beautiful, and the amount of stuff that you've done here. So what I really want to do now, Daniel, is I want to be thinking like, how does Daniel level himself up? So I'm going to come in here and Google this, and when I Google your name, I should get stuff at this point. You're a character TD, which means that you are fluent in a world that a lot of people aren't. Okay, and oh, you're at Digits. How long ago were you at Digits? This is what you've got to get in there and start to kind of offer more to the community. Okay, give us some training, some sense of things to help us kind of grow and help us move forward. I don't see Daniel responding here, so I'm going to be very generic here. The growth that you've done from this, which was 10 months ago, to the other one is night and day, and it all shows the work. Like the quality of the eyes that you've got here, this is all good stuff, but you have absolutely hit the right path to go into the next level. The one thing I would consider doing in here is just getting in and adding a little bit of cavity to your specular. I'm going to zoom in, and zooming in always makes it look a little crap. But here we go. Let's take this all the way down, and I'm going to just turn that cavity mask off. All right. So there's a lot of things that lead to specular, but one of the things that I've found to be very valuable is to just come in and let's turn that off. No effect. Good. All right. Is coming in and adding a little bit of this cavity to chew at the specular. And so you can really see it. I'm going to zoom in so it'll look real ugly, but we're going to zoom in right there. And you see how it just chews it and it makes it a little smaller and takes it down. Because over here in this area, in the cheek, very kind of crappy over here, but as soon as we go in and we add some element of cavity in there, it just starts to chew, and it takes that kind of crazy area and it adds a little bit more in between. So now I can go in, and from a distance, this thing will really kind of really work. It helps it that last little level. So if you're in Marmoset, that's going to be one of the most important things for us to do. Someone is asking, Alexander's asking, what does a TD do? It means it's a technical director. All right, so here's what I want to see from you, Daniel. I want to see you going out there and contacting level 80 and doing a breakdown on this exact model. Contact level 80 and do a tutorial on that. That will help the community share with us all of the love and the joy that you've done here, and put together a Gumroad where you put your assets on. Put the model up there, put your hair setup up there, share with these guys if you can, because now that's how you start to get people aware of what you do. The biggest thing and the most important thing that I've ever done is just constant webinars and sharing value with people. Always sharing value. That's been like the key component, the most important things. Always share value. Like, for example, today I'm sitting here in front of you, and to be honest, I kind of want to sculpt. I don't want to look at people's sculpts. I want to sculpt. But it's built into my genetic code to be here offering value and helping people. You know, it's incredibly important to me. I don't feel good if I don't do that. And that has helped create the career I have. And now, you know, I'm looking at your work and I'm like, in 2018, dude, you grew. 2019, you're going to keep growing, right? But as you grow, you need to go out there and start adding value and doing tutorials and sharing with people to help get the word out about who you are and what you can do. And that's going to open up doors for you. Because I think the whole realism, in case you know, like I've got realism as a big thing I'm doing right now. It's a big thing I've been doing my whole life, right? You guys don't see the drawings and the paintings around me, but I'm traditionally trained over at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, as traditional as that was, I guess. So it's been a focus in my life for a while, but it's the thing that I see a lot nowadays. All right, I'm sorry, this mic is on an old stand. So let's see that level 80 thing, all right? Shengyao Lin, Taipei. What's the focus? Illustrator. All right. And how long ago is this? 10 months ago. All right. So good, but you've got to organize your lights and your darks. Yeah, you're in good shape, but your value contrasts are too high, and we don't have a good. Oh wait, what happened with that? Oh yeah, little things. Okay. And then let's come in here. Now, I'm a believer that people get from A to Z a million different ways, but you really got to get in and start to organize the light. And in fact, I think the biggest person I can direct you to is over here, Mondragiev. Alexander Mondragiev. And notice how these are so integrated. You still see what's going on. And you still see this cinematic kind of lighting here. But really, you don't see a ton of the value variation that you have in here. So if we come in and analyze this, we say, okay, so the value of that skylight's 100. And you come down here and now the highlight on the face is 71. And then the bulk of this face is actually at a value of 20 and the shadow is at a value of 11. Now if I come in and I look at yours, you know, I've got this value, these variations from 80 to 40 and then back to 60 and all over the place, right? And you know, this can be, it's just a lot of stuff going on. So what would happen if you were to go in there and start to organize these lights a little bit and simplify things? Where I'm in the brush. Oh, there's my brush is just very small. So how do we make, and then especially you can see it here on the sides too, right? I think Alexandra Mondriev is going to be a good one for you, because what you see here, you have this big value variation right here in this area. But when you turn on Mondragiev, you still see stuff, but it's different. You know? Very different. There's less of the variation, because right now every square inch of your image is demanding to be seen. And in doing that, you see very little of your image, because it's just too much. Okay, I'm just doing global movements here. And then, no, that's going to have to go on the glow layer. There we go. All right, so start removing detail from this conversation. So I don't know where to focus here. If I zoom out, you can see every inch of this demands some attention, but if I zoom in, you see, I can see a little bit more of what's going on. Okay. And that's, I think I like that better. Yeah. So give me a little bit more focus in your work, and it'll be a nicer and tighter representation, I think, is the key thing. That's going to be the big lesson for you, is to just get in there and really get more control over the overall picture. Because right now it's just all capturing our attention. Become more of a cinematographer, okay? All right, Bryce Bowen. Okay, what is your focus, Bryce? 3D animator. Okay, but it looks like you are creating. Okay, so I don't know about animation. Keelan Lee, animator. Funny thing is we're working on it. There's an animation course that we are developing, but I'm not quite sure what we do here, except for you're responsible for the shading. All right, so Bryce, not a candidate, okay? And we got to sit down and think, what's going on? What do you need to do? And I'm kind of all over the place here. I'm not sure what's going on. So you did go to school, but you're an animator, and if you're an animator, then I don't need to see any of these shading things, and it's a detriment for me to see that, because what I need to do is I need to see your walk cycle, your run cycle, I need to see your animation, I need to see your story, you need to be working on a short, you need to be doing all of that kind of stuff. So my assumption here, Bryce, and the reason why I'm pausing here for a second to really focus on this message is my assumption is you're a 3D animator, which means you're a generalist, which means you're just kind of out of school and you're in a traditional school environment where they're more focused on accreditation than they were on your job. And so you're all over the place. And I see some modeling, and then I look at the T-Rex and the shading, but the T-Rex's sculpt isn't that good, so then I don't know exactly what needs to happen. And I don't like looking at modeling reels, because this is your art station, so you need to make a post of what you do and then explain it in that post. It needs to be as simple as that. All right? So here's what I need you to do, Bryce. I need you to sit down and think, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? If you want to, and don't think about it like I want to model and, oh, I would love it if no, screw that. Get specific, okay? Super important to me is that everybody I talk to, you guys, we all get specific about what we're trying to do, because it's only with specificity that you achieve anything. And I deal with this myself, right? I go back and forth and I got a million different things I want to do, but only with specificity can we really drill down and make this happen for the long haul. All right. So if I'm looking at this, I don't see a lot of specificity. And the key thing isn't your art. It's not me going in and critiquing and saying you got to work on this or you need some subsurface or none of that nonsense, right? I mean, all of that stuff might be relevant or not relevant. But the first thing you got to do is tell me, what the hell do you want to do? What job, right? And beeline for that job. So if you want to be an environment artist, then go back over here to this piece, and we need to make this piece sing, right? If you want to be an animator, I need some walk cycles. If you want to be a sculptor, then I need to see a bunch of other stuff going on in here. So I'm not quite sure where you're going, and that's the most important thing that you can do, okay? All right, have fun. Timothy. Okay, let's take a quick look. 3D designer, VR developer. Okay, so if we're looking here, we can just talk in simple terms then about whether or not these things are working. I'd say this is not appearing as wood. Okay, there's a couple of things that are bugging me, and it all comes down to, and this is, it's easy for us to forget this stuff because we're like, hey, I'm just making something. But no, you're not making something, okay? You're not just making something, all right? You're not just like, I just wanted to make it a project. No, you're making a project. You got to stop. This is something I want done. This is in 3D. It's in 3D, which means this thing needs to look good. I'm just doing it for VR. I don't care what you're doing it for, all right? That's not the point. The point is it realistic? Is it stylized? Okay, that's what's important. And then if it's realistic, it needs to look realistic. If it's stylized, then it needs to look realistic in a stylized way. And so what I'm trying to get at here is, if I'm looking at this, I don't quite understand what's going on with this. I feel like, is that just a simple plane? And then as I come in and I look at this, I don't see any thickness. So where's the thickness on this if this is a mask? And so then also on top of that, all of these scratches are on one level, and and then this has a weird little shape. I'm not sure I understand. So you got to approach this from a more layered perspective, where it's not just like the wood grain attached to this, but you got to go in there and you got to think about the different levels of wood grain and how this knot pulls out more or less than the area around it. And right now this is just all kind of simple, and I don't know if this is wood or lacquered or what this is, but the material expression aspect of this is not defined. Okay, this environment we need to, well, you're probably working on, I don't know, VR Google Blocks, but I'm not quite sure what that would do so for your career. So if we're looking here at this one, this is looking really good, but this is a sketch. You need to get in and finish it. So when you're talking about finishing it, notice how soft all of this form is right here. Soft, 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 soft. All right, I'm a believer, man. Get these things done, get them done right. So you need to get in there and you need to get some planes and deepen that and have that moving in there. So you need to spend about another 3 hours on that and just get this. Don't leave something kind of wishy-washy here. If it's done enough to be posted on ArtStation, is done enough, then you have enough time to go in and add a little bit more specificity and make that a little bit more realistic. Don't just phone this stuff in, okay? The phoning things in, there's a million people that can phone stuff in. You need to be that person that didn't phone it in. Now, here's an example of a project where it's like, this is cool, you've done a lot, but you didn't do any of it deep enough. You could still get a job doing, and maybe in training studios where you got to do simulations and things like that. But if you want to take it to the next level, you can't have sculpts like this. You've got to go in and define them. Now, this might have been a while ago, but if we look here at these top two, these are telling me that you're not finishing form all the way. And you need to finish form. So you got to think, okay, now the principal way that we evaluate this in terms of the boot camp and the way it's your high res is priority. All right, so whether you want to work at AAA or not, it doesn't matter. Okay, VR is what they can do in that is growing every day. You know, I know people that are putting 100,000 polygon characters in VR, right? So work the high resolution and make that thing beautiful. And that means that you got to master the whole sculpting side of this. Just make this thing beautiful as a high resolution. All right, Timothy? All right, Emery, how are you? Available for work and a concept designer. Okay, great. All right, now, of course, concept's not my specialty, but here's a couple of the things I've learned. I've worked with guys like Dylan Cole and James Klein and all of that. Get your sketches. Get these guys. I think are really cool. But what you need to start to do now is move those off to the side. So those are going to be your sketches. We need these. We need these and stories, right? That's supposed to be really, that's going to be something that's really significant for us to really get the most out of this and really work the story angle, Emery, as much as you possibly can, right? Like this is really good how you're starting to define this and get a sense of all of these things. And you're getting good, you've got very good atmosphere, which means that as it goes back in space, you're dealing with value and chroma appropriately. There's some issues in terms of the reflectivity of this piece that I think you could kind of paint out, but it's not that big of a deal. The primary thing that you've got to think about now is how you're matching up in the whole big scheme of this. And start thinking and making sure that you're really focusing on the work that's really, really moving the needle. All right, and if it's not moving the needle, don't post it here. So this piece that we're looking at right here, this one doesn't move the needle. There's nothing going on over here. This area, is way too vague, and then the lighting is all white, 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 white. So don't post that. Get rid of that. Focus on the stuff that really is moving the needle. This is really cool, kind of like how this whole piece works, and there's some variety in here as you're trying to figure this out. This is great. Okay, then also partner with some 3D people to get in there and start to build some of this stuff. This, in terms of the background, see how simple this is? And then over here, this is just like a student work phoned in. So we need to do more, right? Need to do more to make this kind of work. I'm not sold on this either. You got to spend more time on this. One of the things I universally heard was just how much time it takes. you know, so much, incredible amount of time to get in there and really define all of these different elements and to really make all of this stuff kind of work. You're in the first couple of days here. You need to go deeper on this, much deeper on this. You see the strokes in here, like you need to spend another week just on this and make me believe this just in a painting. That's the thing that's sitting in front of you. If I come over here and I look at this, you can see, these are, you can get this kind of quick stuff in, but now if I come in and I look at these grass blades, right, this stuff's, it's too distincted by itself. I don't see little nuances of edges and things like that. They just kind of are like stamped on there a little bit. And so you need to get in and add even more quality to it. These are kind of cool, but it's just real simple textural tricks you're doing. You got to move past the textural tricks and really start to understand what it means to kind of render this work. Textural tricks are always there. But when I look at this and I see it in the context of all your pieces, I'd say the textural you're relying on the textural tricks too much. And you need to develop your capacity to render. Like, what is this? It's just textural. What's this? It's just textural. Well, put something in there. Get some environment. Maybe what happens if a cloud comes back in there? Or darken that whole area so that we're not paying so much attention to it with the contrast that we're getting, okay? All right. That's my advice. Tariq. All right. I'm going to hustle this up, guys. Tariq, let's look at the screen here. All right. So I saw this in the art test. And looks like you're in Marmoset. So that's good. Okay, I'm not going to I gave you all the anatomy and stuff like that, I think, there in the art test. But here's the deal. This does not look like skin yet. This doesn't look like skin, and this is not realistic. You need to make that smaller. This is good. Great. I'm loving this. Look at how blown out that is. Look at how blown out that is. So the biggest problem you're facing right now is material. Yeah, all of that is blown out. So you need to get in and really work the material on this. Don't, I know this was posted 2 months ago, but hey, this is the biggest lesson I got for people is, stop just posting stuff. Post finished stuff. Finish it, right? But I get it. I understand, because the thing is like, I don't know what to do. And so what do? Just sit here and rustle around, right? But here's what you've got to start to think about. You got to start to look at this and be like, well, oh, cool, you're doing a Keanu. Does this look like skin? Look up somebody has made it look like skin. What did they do? Right? If you go into Marmoset, you see a whole bunch of tutorials that go over a bunch of different stuff there. All right. In this particular scene, in order for us to get this into look like skin, it would take me probably 5 minutes. Not a lot of time. You've probably got all the assets that I need to help me get it there. But your subsurface scattering depth is not correct, which could mean that your size is not accurate. Your scene size. So in the scene, do you have the imported set properly? You have to make sure that that's set the way that it works for your model, and you can always just say show scale and see from there. Make sure it fits that head. Okay, that's one thing. But then the other thing is going in and making sure that you've got the specular, and the specular is always super. Let's turn the show scene off. The specular is always a pain. It's a process to go in there, but it's also low. Like, look, that specular is a 0.12, and then this specular is a 0.4. Right? So there's a lot of stuff going on in there that you really got to get to work on, and then not to mention transitional meshes, which become really important. But that's a separate conversation. So, you've got to work on materials, Tariq. I know you can do this. You're a digital sculptor, but the next level for you is figure out your materials and get your rendering. Because you've got likeness and all of that stuff, but with this is going to be a piece if you just finish the materials. Cool? All right, Samuel. Freelance, concept artist, illustrator. All right, this is a great question here. Alexander Julius is saying, yeah, I always worry it takes so much time to finish things. I don't want my account to look inactive. Man. Yeah, that's like, I get it. I don't want my account to look inactive. But, you know, you got two choices, you know. It looks like you've been busy and producing crap, or it looks like you've been busy and haven't been posting because it looks so awesome, right? So when we put it in that kind of framework, it's like, well, have you been busy posting or have you been busy working? Who cares what these people think? You know, go to my ArtStation. You're not going to see a ton. Who cares what other people think? Post when you are ready and you feel comfortable with it. You know, I post and then I take stuff off, and then, you know, ultimately post the stuff that you are comfortable with being there. That's the thing that you got to kind of keep in mind. And you, if you think about this as a business, what do you need people to see? That's what you're going to be offering. That's what you're going to be sharing. So it's not a popularity contest, you know. Post what needs to be seen. Emery, glad that was useful. All right, Samuel, concept artist. All right, Samuel. This is... Okay. So illustrator, if we want to get into concept, I think I would want you to get in and study a bit more of the cinematic aspects. And really, but really the key thing is improving your drawing. I think that's it. Yeah. This is I see a beginning here. But then maybe it's not. Maybe it's landscape painting. Yeah, that's cool. You're doing that. Okay. You can you can paint those things. Cool. But there's a 2D aspect that's coming from a reliance on line that I'm not buying. And this image really throws me because it's very illustrative and the soft gradients and, you know, not a lot of clear form. It's just very vague. So I'm not quite sure, Samuel, what the focus is. This is kind of cool. 8 days ago, but you had 9 months off. Here I just said wait. But in 9 months. All right. So I guess I got to know, Samuel, what your focus is and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And the work is uneven, so I'm getting thrown here because this looks solid. This is a great exercise. This is not. This needs work before you're ready to kind of share it. The gradients on this and the position of the eyeballs and all of that's just phoned in. So I'm not going to accept that. This, I don't know how this relates, you know, to the other pieces. There's no real detail in there. But if you look at these guys and you're like, oh yeah, you're really working the crap out of that, right? I mean, that's like a lot of stuff. So we're all over the map here, so to speak. And so that's causing me some confusion and some pause. So basically the last 4 posts I wouldn't share. I'd remove those. And then I would be working on more of these pieces exactly like this. You know, this is stuff that can definitely help you get that job. All right, Samuel? Cool. Umer. Cool. Okay, 3D artist at Quicksoul. How are you? Do you know Ollie? I think he's up there in that area. Tariq, absolutely. Okay, so 3D artist at Quicksoul. So these are a different conversation, and I would assume that you're wanting me to review this. You sent me this. Okay, good. So you're a 3D artist, meaning you know software, you know you can do this, but you're quite possibly looking to Sorry, I'm processing as I go here and thinking about character as a direction for you. All right, cool. Okay, so a couple of things I think are going to be really important. One, make sure that you check out the Blair Armitage Game Art Institute podcast episode. I think she was number 3. I think there's a video here. There should be. Yeah, there's a video. Okay, this is an hour and a half, and Blair is here demoing. It's a fantastic interview I had with her. I love Blair, just a wonderful person. And here she goes through her lighting. Okay, your lighting is what really needs work. Okay, that's the principal thing that I think we need to do. So I don't know where I can share this. But if you Google it, you'll be in fine shape. The specularity, I'm not sold on, but you're going to have to figure that out. Now, see, this is a very CG specularity in terms of how that works. And that you're going to have to really look at Blair to help understand how she goes. And you see that CG right there on the breast. I'm not sold on that, but I understand that you're going with Overwatch. And so, this is the general process. The other thing is I would go in and evaluate Blair and all these other guys. You need a little bit more AO or a little bit more gradients on this to kind of break these things up. This is super clean, super, super, super clean in there. Right, and then also, again, the biggest thing that's really throwing me right now is that the lighting just needs to be a little bit more dynamic, and that's where I would recommend getting in with Blair and really getting in touch with her. Okay, your sculpt on this, if we're looking at just the sculpt, is looking very nice. I'm happy with the sculpt. There's a couple of mistakes in terms of the facial anatomy where the cheek and the cheek fat are merging. And so you're missing this kind of malar mound is what they call it right in there. And the cheek moves a little bit more to the inside. But you got a good separation in the upper and the lower lip. Oh, man, 2:30. No wonder I'm hungry as hell. And then there we go. So the form here, really good. This is the sculpt I'm much more sold on than I am on the texturing. Okay, I don't care about the topology. Definitely need to readjust the cheek fat on her. Hair looks cool enough. It's a little repetitive. You see this 1, 2. There is some movement in there, but I'm not sold. Okay, so it's just a little repetitive. Try to get a little movement in there, a little bit more. But the texturing is the biggest problem in the lighting. All right, Umar? Alexis. All right. Cool. Start your own company. And you teach, and you've been doing it for a couple of years. Okay. And you're in Quebec. Sweet. Okay, so we've got props. Cool. A little Thomas Witzelbach. Three years ago. Clean up your art station, Alexis. Get rid of these things. And stay focused on what is going to help you. Like this, I think, is pretty much the start. Not sure about this. It doesn't have enough detail or props or the lighting could make a difference there. Wait, why is that 3 months and the other one was 2 years? Okay. This I like. I would love to see this textured. This absolutely should be textured. It sounds like this is something you did for a job, so you're just showing what you did. This is good. Love this. Great presentation on that. Not sold on this. What's going on with that? Yeah, that lighting. The lighting is killing you. It looks like that's actually a flat color. There's so much light in this. This looks like this is not well lit at all. It looks like it's way too ambient. It's in a light room. Relight that. Maybe this needs a little more AO. to really help distinguish it. It looks like it's within range. When I get close up, I feel better about it. But that specular is way too specular. This, I think, is one of the pieces that has the most material expression authenticity. This is a really rock solid piece, Alexis. And then, but all of it's treated the same. Like that leather should be very different. And this should be different. So I don't get a sense of a good, strong material definition in different places. They're all kind of treated roughly the same. So get in there and add a little bit more variety to them. Work your specular in this image. Yeah, that specular on that's not working for me. But you're dealing with something really complex. You got some seams that you got to do. So in this particular case, the way I would approach this, depending on what your goal is just cut pieces out and focus on those for your portfolio. You can cut a piece out and focus on that for your portfolio. It's almost nicer than going in and trying to piece all this together and for somebody to see the whole thing and how it works. Of course, you can put a little pipe right there to kind of resolve that. But this is one of the things where I think it was Joseph Brogan. Yeah. So this is one of the issues that I had with Joseph. Joseph's in the boot camp. And he did this really cool redo of Zelda Twilight Zone and Zelda Twilight Princess. I haven't eaten lunch. I'm in Twilight Zone right now. And so this was his kind of redo, and here's the back and forth. Okay, but it's hard to see what he really did here. You know, what does it mean, right? And look at this little thing in the background right here. And you're like, well, you know, you can't really see it here. It's too big, you know, but when you come down, now you see these individual pieces. Now it really starts to sing. Like, here's that little prop that was in the background. It's gorgeous, right? And then he does this little scene. Like, I love this scene. It's like one of my favorite scenes ever. It's so cool. I don't know why I get all excited about this, but this kind of stuff is really important, right? And so as it is with your piece, it's just too big for us to grasp. Start breaking it down. Cool, Alexis? All right, I'm gonna hustle, guys, because I gotta eat, and you guys got things to do, don't you? What's going on? Are we at 2 hours now, or is my time off? Because I thought it was 12:30, so it should be 2 hours. Mr. Beardall, how are you? Cool, I'm just checking the posts. Let me check YouTube real quick. Cool. Garrett. Burke. Yeah, no, you gotta have posted it there. I've got everybody listed I'm gonna review today. All right, Farad, Art Station, Istanbul, great. Okay, so what's the focus? And what's the difference here? Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful sculpt, but that's 2 years ago. And that's 3 years, yeah. So the growth you had between that and this is pretty night and day. And then 5 months ago. All right, but here's the problem, Farhad. Your work is all over the place. Yeah. And that's a problem in and of itself. We need consistency in the work. I look at this and I'm like, this sculpt, this really works. This is really nice. It's a whole different level. But then if I look at some of the other stuff over here, there's problems. So for example, in this, there's some issues here with the texture and that. I don't know what's going on in that area. That's a little iffy. And these are really cool, but you need to get in and start, like, what does the infraorbital margin do, right? These are the important things that you got to think about in that area. What do the infraorbital margin do? How can you kind of move these things around a little bit to make it a little cleaner? This is just a little bit too generic. And then here, this is really good. You're getting a lot of great stuff, but you're not dialing this down into deeper levels. So what I need you to do now, Farhad, is go in and study what what are all the nuances in here? You need to be looking at that area, and you need to have some grasp of how this form, if you're looking at it from your angle, see how it moves like that? Well, usually people will treat this as it just kind of moves like this, but it doesn't. It moves one, and then it moves again, because it's got this little hit right here. And that's the kind of thing that we need to focus on and get really detailed about, you know, how this form comes out, and then it builds this form, and a little dip right in there, and then this is going to be the temporal line, and get really, you know, like I don't have any wrinkles in the forehead, so that needs to happen, and the wrinkles and the pores here are way too large. You need to take those down to about half the size that they are right now, and just keep working on making these things. Take one of these and spend a month on one of these, making one of these work. Stop moving from one model to another model. Make one awesome. Ito. Let me head it back over to Facebook. Yeah, we've been at this 2 hours. All right. Ito, looks good. I'm liking this. I'm going to go all the way here just to see that's 2 years ago. And we're coming in here. Good. All right, so yeah, you've got the skills, you've got the capacity, but you're missing tying it all together. Could be the map size that's causing some of this kind of artifacting. Hopefully you're doing this at 4K. I don't like the artifacting. Really do not like the artifacting. And also I'm not comfortable with the material. So you can do this, but what I really want you to do is start thinking about, because this isn't entirely realistic in terms of the specularity of this, really get some, the most important thing that you've got to focus on is this level of authenticity and really building these things and starting to see what actually needs to happen here. And I'm just, what is this? Yeah, I would, if I was you, Ito, I would say try to get yourself into, try to do something as realistic as possible. It'll inform your more stylized approach. But your more stylized approach is kind of floating for me a little bit. And I really want you to get it a little bit more specific. Like this is, the specular is very garish and large, and, you know, there's this big Baroque kind of quality to it. And that's starting to detract from this for me. So I would love it if you just took something and you just tried to make it as authentic as humanly possible. An example of that might be, let me take a look at a sewing machine. Sewing marching, don't know what that means. Machine. There we go. Adrian's is who I wanted to look at. All right, so let's look at Adrian's. All right, so we look at Adrian's art station. This is her boot camp character. Pretty stunning, yeah? I love this. But this is what I want you to see. Now, if we compare this with yours, and this one, her material is more believable. And it's a subtle difference, but this is, in my view, what you need to start to focus on. And a lot of that has to do with you just got to master the specularity. All right, that was the big issue that we had with this thing. It's a ton of work to get this to really look authentic and powerful. So, you know, look at the specularity on the wood, right? We spent a lot of time, she spent a lot of time, but there was a big focus of our time was to get the specularity on the wood different from the specularity on the metal. That's the kind of stuff that you need to start to get in and focus on, okay? Work on your specularity more than anything else, and your believability will come. Hope that helps, Ito. Karim. this is a digital sculpt, and show it with the matte cap gray, not this poly funky thing. It doesn't show the shadows, and sculptors need shadows. Okay, you got it into a game engine. That's good. All right, but the big issue that you're facing is now you got to take form all the way, and so I see things are a little bit soft in a couple of areas. You know, like there's no overlap for where this is, and how does this merge in here, and then how does that merge? You know, you really got to get in and start to get a clearer sense of how all of this stuff kind of behaves. So I'm not sold on the material, and it really comes down to getting in and doing some more anatomy, you know, and really focusing on anatomy as much as possible. That's probably going to be the most important thing to move you. Damien, and I'm hustling now, guys. Damien, I'm getting everybody who submitted a little later, by the way. I prepared a model inspired by, this looks really good. You know, it's a little bit noisy in terms of the dirt, and this is the common element that I see. And I'm going to leave you with one idea, Damien. I want you to think of noise versus gradient. Okay, noise versus gradient. And Georgian is the one I always think of. Dishonored 2. Don't know why that link didn't come up. Now, here you see noisy, but it's in a gradient down towards the bottom. And up here, it's nice, clean, and smooth, okay? Gradient versus noise. That's going to make a big difference in your work and your capacity, because right now it's all noisy. There's not a ton of gradient to it, and there could be. I mean, I kind of see a gradient here, but it's too obvious of a gradient. And so you need to really massage that and get those a little bit cleaner. Okay, Brandon. Brandon, you got to work on your anatomy. You've got a lot of processes. You got a lot of, a lot of pieces. You got a lot of gumption. You got a lot of work moving. This is good. But the most important thing, Brendan, is you got to get in there and really work on your anatomy to help sell these things. And then the other thing is you need to get into Marvelous Designer to do the clothing. Don't do the clothing in ZBrush. That'll change your entire career. All right? So I'd love to see you in the face class. And then darken those eyes. Just, they're not that white. What was that sound? Maxens. All right. Very cool. Let's take a look at your about. You've been at this 3 years. And I'm reading through quick. Studied. Okay. And there you are. And okay, great. You studied, so now you're actually in the market, I'd assume. Okay, that's posted 2 years ago. And this is posted 9 months ago. Okay, a lot of growth in there. Your skin is significantly better. That looks really good. Excited about that. There's a couple of things I'm going to point out I want you to be mindful of. Okay, look at how this is kind of, I'm not buying that. I don't believe that texture. And then the other thing is look at this curve. So if something is draping, if fabric is draping, it drapes from one point down. It doesn't, unless it's sewn to do that, it's not going to do that. So this represents a digital sculpting problem. It's a little weak. So I would make sure that you kind of fix that and get that clean and get that just kind of bouncing down. And, you don't want that softness. That's a deal killer in here. And then this leather is not, it's textured. You got to take the texture scale down to probably half that. Okay. Definitely down to half that, because that texture scale is way too high. Okay. It looks good from here, but the devil's in the details. And that is one of the things that just kills me right there. That soft clothing. E.T., if I said it right. Looks good. Loving this. You're into anatomy. You're into sculpting. You're into stylized. I would be thinking gradients. See, it's too dirty in the forehead. But it looks pretty rock solid. I like the sculpt. I like this. I love this. It's really cool the way this whole thing's kind of put together. And, yeah, up close it looks really dirty. But here it looks really nice. Now, I'd probably augment the eyelashes. Give them a little bit more. But there's something really cool about the way, and I like the way that you got the eyebrows. It's a little A little simple, but and then careful of your eyelashes. I don't like, maybe drop your eyelash right there. Don't put them down here, because now they're starting to look like there's something in her eye. And then eyelashes actually don't start at this edge. They actually start a little bit up above, so you can get rid of those as well. Then it's just going to be those, and maybe gradient it in a little bit. But this looks really nice, and the hair is good with some nice variety in it. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with all that. So this is a really great piece. Where's more? What have you been doing? I'd be doing 5 of these. Bust these out, man. This looks good. Move in this direction. Don't wait. Don't show me this. I don't like movies. It takes too much time. Put the movie at the end. But that's pretty nice, though. Yeah, your specular's off a little bit, but that's okay. More. What are you waiting for? Alfred. All right, exciting. What's going on? Look at that. Look at all that crazy. How much work do you need to do? I love it, all right? Let's take a look. What are the issues? What do you want to be happening? 5 years experience. Let's take a look at your LinkedIn. We're getting to the end here, guys. 4 years in the video game, sci-fi, liquid development, and CG bot. Okay. All right. I've been thinking about beholders for a while. That's old, though. 2 years. So what have you been doing recently? These are all old. Posted a year ago. Okay. Let's review this. Varvatos. Glorious death. All right, real simple Alfredo. I think the key thing that I can give you here is you've got everything at a certain level of finish, and you need to think about going more granular. So like this, whatever this noise pattern is also here, it's also here. I feel like the same level of noise pattern is over here, it's also here. So now what I want you to do is I want you to start to localize your attention. So pay attention to just this area or just this area. And then come in and pay attention to just this area. And what happens when you pay attention to just that area? Well, maybe the dirt accumulates here a little bit more. Maybe you change the wrinkles or the pores, or something else kind of happens as we get in here. Maybe in this area we're going to kind of change that around a little bit. Just try to get a little bit more crazy going on in there, okay? I really want to see you get in there and add more levels of detail to this, because this work is really good, but it all seems like it stops at a certain level. And also, I don't feel like there's a really strong locus of my attention. All right, it all looks like it has the same level of detail, and so I really want you to get in there and get even more detail in areas. You see this with guys like Carlos Fuentes. You know, the work is detailed as hell, but there's always a focus, you know, and he spends a lot of time on that. Notice that face is largely the focus, not these other parts, you know. So that's what I would probably do, is try to figure out where your focus is and push that. So I would imagine putting some focus on the face, but that means that if I zoom in like this, I should not be seeing, see these large movements? I should be seeing a deeper level of attention to detail and more stuff going on. Right now, this form is treated the same as this form. And that, I don't think, is what I think that needs to change. Cool? All right, Tony. Good deal, Tony. Tony from Orlando. Okay, a year ago you did this. You're on the right path. Got to do some work on facial anatomy. Facial anatomy. Okay, one of Dylan's characters. And just anatomy in general. All right. What can I tell you? All right, more than anything else, Tony, because you can do the muscles, but you're a little soft in the underlining form. And it's visible right there. You see how your deltoid moves out? Yeah, it does, but really, like this, we want to try to keep this as simple as possible. And then notice how your form moves in this way. We need to get in and just, instead of studying anatomy per se, study the structural understanding. And so the best advice I can give you is to come over is to find Gottfried Bomis. You know, this guy is really gonna change things. I think this is a really fantastic person to kind of study. So check out Gottfried, get a little bit more structure in there. If we look at the face, the things that you need to start to think about is really just finding more words, right? So study plastic surgery and learn about the medial jugal groove, the malar mound, learn about how the cheek fat comes in here, and then the different fat pads. And this whole area, it's just soft. I don't see a lot of anatomy or form or in stuff in there, and it's probably just because you're just not aware of it. So you got to get in there and learn more words for the face. Rodrigo. Cool. Rodrigo, I would need to know more of what your focus is in terms of what you're looking for, because these look rock solid. I don't see any issues that I would confront. I mean, you could change the lighting. It's getting blown out a little bit. Tiny thing, though. You're getting great subsurface. You have wonderful control over the form. You're getting fur, hair, all these different things in there. So this is looking really nice. Look at the peach fuzz. Sweet. Yeah, great job, Rodrigo. And so much growth, right? Like that's 2 years ago, and that's 3 months ago. You're on the right path. That's fantastic. I'm so glad to see that. You got your skin, you got your lighting, and the material definition is looking really good. I don't see any problems for the leather versus the crocheted thing, right? Versus the shirt. So all of that looks really good to me. Yeah, no, this is looking really good. Not sure what happened to her nose. It's probably in the concept. But yeah, beautiful. Beautiful attention to detail there. Good job. That's really good, Rodrigo. I got nothing on that. I think you're doing a great job. And the growth that we can see here is exactly, you see how you don't have as much control over the forms here. There's like a little bit, and a little bit, and then there's these crazy valleys. And then we come in here and it's like, oh yeah, that's beautiful. You're treating things as volumes and forms. So great job, Rodrigo. Tim, what's the focus, Tim? What do you want to do? Okay, from the Art Institute. Okay. Okay. All right. Different poses. Okay, I'm a little confused by this. Okay, let me do this. In the presentation, I'm not kind of sold on this because I don't know what's real and what's not, which you might think of as a good thing, but it's, at the end of the day, I just don't know what I'm hiring you for, and that's a problem. So make sure that this is presented where, the prop and what you're doing is a separate asset, and you're kind of treating that as a separate asset. And the person I always like to refer people to is Melissa Mazzocco. She's in an early version of our boot camp. And this is great presentation. So presentation is key, and your presentation is confusing me. I don't really know exactly what's going on or what you've done or what the job is. So you need to get back and get your presentation kind of working. This is a little bit better, but I also need to see the high resolution, so to speak. So that'd be really good. Now, here's the deal. You're in environments. These are about 2 years, 4 months now for this one. You need to really start working on in fact, let me send you in this direction. I think you should really work on dioramas. So Anya Jo Elvidge is going to do a diorama class pretty soon. This is what I think might be really fun for you, because you need to complete environments. You know, that's kind of, you either need to create props all the way or you need to create environments. And Anya's going to do a class. It's going to be pretty awesome. And all this detail, you're going to learn a bunch of stuff in there. Yeah, that's going to be fun. So with that done and said, I think that's going to be kind of the thing for you to do is for you to pick a project and start going a little bit deeper into finishing one particular, not one, but I mean one project, Tim. Okay, because this is going to be hard road to hoe if you just got small props like this. The reason why is because they don't have enough relevance. Okay, that's the kind of the key term there is they need to be relevant for somebody to feel like you've invested enough and you've invested it wisely and that, you know, you're a candidate for what they need you to do. So you need to be really thinking about what's relevant to other people. All right, let's take a look at Oliver. Oliver, these are great. This is a little... You're missing eye shields. Gotta make sure you put some eye shields in there. And by eye shields, I mean like a piece of transparent stuff that kind of darkens that. An example of that is eye shields. Yeah. Hopefully you can see that. You know, just something that's going to darken the top because it's just too, or you do it in post. Okay. Looks like you got eye shields here. That's good. Put them in the other one. And then let's take a look at this. All right. Yeah, get your eye shields in there. Otherwise, I think we're in solid shape. So in terms of your presentation, I think we're in great shape. So let's talk anatomy real quick. I think I'm fine with your anatomy. I'm fine with your form. Fine with that. The only thing I would adjust, let's go to the material. Yeah, the face is really working. You need those eye shields. And from this view, we're okay. But we could use more, like this could use more sculpted to get some more wrinkles. It looks a little phoned in right now, especially if these things are kind of pulling up on each other. You just got to get in there and get a little bit more detail into that. Not this one. This one. All right, and then this, do you see how this wrinkle kind of almost exists? It doesn't really fall flat and sit on the skin very well. So, you know, this is something I think you should really get in and sculpt that and really work on the authenticity. And one of the tricks that we do is you come in with a standard brush and you just run the standard brush along the edge. Okay, that's going to be the key. Just run the standard brush along the edges to kind of just pull those out a little bit. I think that's going to be important. Okay. But otherwise, I think you're in fine shape, except for the eye shields, and I would work on the eyes, making the eyes a little smaller. You know, don't be afraid to bisect the upper iris, to bisect the iris. Just don't be afraid to kind of hover that, and then check how much extra space there is there in the corner. I'm not sold on that. You gotta probably bring that in, and it's a beast. It's hard, I know it, to know how much, but you got to do that. Okay. Great work, though, Oliver. Great work. Mez visuals, not my cup of tea. So you have to tell me, Mez. Leave me a note, and I'll do this later. Leave me a note what your focus is. So it doesn't fit game arts. Andrew, this is really good. Look at this. This is great. You've got an interview. You've got some materials in here, and so. Not sold on that. Okay, good. Take the height down. The height is a little much in these. You might want to take that down just a little bit, make it a little bit more authentic. They wouldn't model these with such a strong upward bend. It'd be a little bit less height than these when they make these things. It's good, but here with substance, instead of us evaluating, this is a little... Yeah, I'm not sold on those buttons, but it's a simple gradient thing that's getting you. Ow. It's kind of nice, but that wave is kind of working its way through everything. Got to work on that. Probably create a little bit more separations, because yeah, that wave, it goes all the way back in the distance, and the repetitive pattern takes away from the whole thing. All right, so I got to know what your focus is, Andrew, and what it is you really want to achieve. But this is looking really good. So the key thing now is to start to create pieces, right? And so if we look over here, you've already started to do that. I think you did some challenges. That's good. But what I would do is start to localize your focus. Like all these projects you all have, they're too massive, right? So you're not finishing things. And that's ancient. Grown so much since then. So what I would love to see is smaller sections where you just really kill the smaller section. You just make it beautiful, right? Because this is, it's a little simple. And then we come in and it's like, this is a lot of work. I mean, I know you busted your butt here, but it's not reaching the level that we need it to. So you need to start to pull your focus in a little bit and start to work on smaller areas and really finish those smaller areas. All right, Eater. Great. Finn. That guy's chin. This looks really good, man. I like these things. Okay, so at this point now, we start to, you know, it's like, what is our focus, right? You know, what's going to guide us? I definitely think in terms of anatomy, you know, you're doing really good, but the thing that you got to keep in mind about now is, like, you just got to find the landmarks. Like, you're just missing the acromial process, these, the head of the, not the head, but the little bit of the clavicle, and how the clavicle comes and sits, and then there's the acromial process, and then the muscles come out from that. So you're missing that whole shape. And then we're also missing the 8th rib, which actually comes right here. This is the 8th rib below the pectoralis. And so you end up doing muscle upon muscle upon muscle, and that's fine, but you're gonna limit what you can kind of achieve, right? Now this is a little bit better, but the acromial process is a little wonky. It's not really clean how that is set up. Here you're gonna the 8th rib a little bit better. I know this is 4 years ago, but you know, the general idea is at this point you haven't kind of dived into that deeper. Now this is really nice. I love how you're establishing this and moving that forward, and that's really nice. Okay, but this is really very deep for that form to kind of go in and then out. That's pretty crazy. I'm not sure about what's happening there, but your feet and toes look pretty rock solid. Yeah. Okay, and then in terms of the forearm anatomy, you know, there's little small things to nitpick about, right? But you sold the concept to me. So the extensor muscles are going to be coming from right in here, and then there's the brachioradialis coming there, and then there's the extensors kind of wrapped down around here, so they do a little bit of that. So you just could get a little bit more of this. I think it's called the extensor carpi radialis brevis, not brevis, the extensor carpi ulnaris, or extensor ulnaris, something where it's along the ulna. And so that whole form you could kind of rework, but you sold the concept, which is what's important. And if I look at this main image, you got the specularity in there, you got the skin, and I think that the general purpose has been served for the most part. So this is really good. The key thing moving forward is you just got to get in there and get more clarity with the skeletal structure. And that'll help you, especially you see in the brow, you're missing some skeletal structure, and it's actually starting, the brow is basically becoming muscles at this point. Absolutely, Christian. Alexander, glad you've learned a lot. Yeah, this is a ton. Octavian. Don't open that. Makes me want to open that. Okay, so this is okay, but here we just need, what I need you to do now, Octavian, is with these kind of things, like this is cool, but we need to be more specific. It's not specific, that's not the word. I'm getting a little loosey-poosey in the brain, but this is way too big. And way too big. Like if that was, I mean, it's just massive. It's like, that's when you call the CDC. No, you don't even call the CDC. It's like, you're just, I don't even know who you would call. What hazmat team if this was sitting on your thing. Make sure you were working from reference, because I have a feeling you're just kind of putting that in there. Make sure you're working from reference, and that is much more accurate to reference. As it is, make sure you're working for reference and focus on authenticity, Octavian. That's the most important thing. We really got to practice your powers of observation. That's the thing that's on my mind for you. Practice your powers of observation. The height is too much here, and you're specular. So in this area, the height is too much, it's too wobbly, and you're specular. You got nothing's paid attention to on the specular. It's just universal. So you have to screw with your specular. Don't leave it simple sitting there. Okay, let's take a look at your face, because that's probably why you were submitting that. And so there's a couple of things for us to kind of evaluate in here. This is a bit about a stage 1 on this. I'm going to give you a couple of anatomy points. One, the cheeks usually come to the bottom of the nose, right? So make sure you come all the way down. All right, the other thing is you got to get your temporal line in there. You're missing the bony temporal line, which will really help you set up the more of an angular plane in there. And, he's got kind of a broad forehead, so we have to deal with that. But we're going to drop the cheek a little bit, and then we're going to pull this in. And then, I see here surface level detail. I don't see you going in and getting some more of the structural sense of this. And so there's a couple of things I'd recommend. Either join me in the face sculpting class, or head over to ZBrush Workshops and get the digital sculpting method. It's actually pretty inexpensive. And this goes through, do I have anything about it? You can check out the webinar. And I've got some stuff here. This is actually this was really impactful to a lot of people. Very impactful. To helping them simplify form and structure, because what we see here is this is just getting a little bit too much into the surface, and we've lost some of the structural understanding. Like, say, for example, the structural understanding of the orbit of the eye, this upper corner, right? It's just like, here's a form coming down, but I don't have a strong sense of the glabella or the fat pad, or then that coming into the lacrimal bone, or, you've got stuff there, but you need to go in and get deeper. Cool? Okay, let me see if this is the last. Ow. Kingston, associate artist, NetherRealm Studio, Chicago. How you doing, Kingston? Glad you're here. You're going to be the last critique. So let's go into your about, see if we can learn about you. We're going 3 hours. Oof, do not know if I can do that weekly. Yeah, associate artist, technology cage. Great, you've been doing this less than a year. Awesome. Congratulations, Kingston. That's the dream, right? So let's look at what you've done and see if we can track this. 2 years ago, you were doing intestines. and you're doing the workout bag. And then this work. Great. This is the kind of work that gets you hired. That's awesome. I'm not sold on the lighting on this, but that's okay. Okay. And 6 months ago. I think I'm going to keep this simple, Kingston. I've been talking so much, my jaw's getting a little funky. I'm sorry, I'm going back and just making sure I get a sense of your skill, scope of it all. Okay. All right, my friend, the most important thing for me right now, for you, Kingston, and this kind of goes for a lot of artists, actually. You've got the job, you're there, keep the job, right? But now you got to be thinking about what you do in your free time, how you're going to kind of make things kind of work, keep moving forward. So if you check out this, like this image, I think is something that I'm really sold on, right? You don't lose track of this. This is this is the thing, and this is a year ago. This is the thing that's so important. And I know a lot of people get sidetracked with challenges and doing these challenges, which is great, you know, and all that stuff. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can kind of achieve, but you know, you're usually rushed. And my advice to you is screw the challenges, you know, because here I'm looking at this, and this is posted 6 months ago. It started as a fun sculpt, right? But this is actually going to be a detriment to you in compared to this. This is the work you need to be doing. This work doesn't need to exist on ArtStation. It's cool, it's fun, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram, put it, you know, whatever you want to do. But I'm not getting, look at the anatomy is not clear here. That clavicle is straight. It doesn't have the bow. I don't have the acromion process. And then the muscles are very bop, 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 right? They're just like, they're just sausage links, okay? And so I'm here today to remind you that this is your heart, this is your motherland, this is what you need to be doing. Now, you might have gotten in here and gotten frustrated, or something might have happened or whatnot, but if you do 5 of these in 2019, and that's all you did is 5 of these, and you had awesome textures on them, or even maybe not awesome textures on them, that would be an amazing 2019. No more challenges, you know, unless it fits what you're trying to do, or all that stuff. Give me 5 of these. That's what we want for 2019. Cool? That's the key thing you guys got to think about, you know. Work, 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 work. You got to be doing the work that makes a difference. Okay? It's not working. It's not like, hey, I got to be sculpting. No, that's not because here's the thing. Nobody cares. You know? They all have agendas. You're here right now. You're not here because, you know, you want to see Ryan. You're here because you want to learn. Because you have an agenda to learn something, right? Which is great. It's fine. People are coming to your ArtStation. They're not coming. I know people aren't coming because they're like, oh, Ryan's going to... They're coming because they want to learn something. So I have to deliver value instead of just sitting here and being like, hey, you know, watch me comb my hair. Wait, I do have hair. Yeah. My soon non... keep threatening my wife that I'm going to shave it. And she doesn't like that. But you might see a video of my children shaving my head one of these days. I just desperately want to do that. And so the key thing is sitting down and just taking work like this and moving this stuff all the way through and just trying to get finished kind of pieces together. Now, you know, finished is a relative term. If you were to just get it to this level that I'm looking at right here, you know, this is great. This is the exciting thing, you know, because when people are recruiting and looking for work, they're coming in and they're like, yeah, I need somebody who can sculpt, or I need somebody who can do clothing. And notice I get so much information for what you can do just here looking at the way in which this is treated, right? Throw some texture on this baby, and I'm going to get to know so much more about what you can do. But they're coming to your work because they're looking for somebody to do a job. You need to show them that you can do a job, right? Not that you can do a challenge. Not that you like to have fun sculpting, but that you can do the job. That's the key thing that you need to think about. That makes sense? Makes sense? Did that make sense? Where's my phone? Two hours and 45 minutes. All right. Let's take a quick look. All right, guys, I got to run. No more art stations. I will try to do another on Friday, but I got to find a way to limit the cray-cray because it's too much. But that done and said here, I have reviewed a lot of stuff today. I've said a lot. Sorry, it's like I'm playing guitar with this dang mic stand. I don't need to review your art station. You need to review your art station. I've said the same thing I say all the time. What do I say? If somebody here, write down the 5 things I always say. Because there's 5 things I always say. I apply them to different people in different ways and things like that. I don't need to review your art station. Here's the thing. You need to review your art station. The problem is you don't know how to review your art station. That's why I'm here. I'm here trying to show you how to do it. So what are the things I say? Did you take it into Marmoset? Did you finish it? Is this a high resolution? Did you get to the texturing? Did you phone in the form and did you go from... See, because most people, we forget. And I got to share this video with you guys. I got to share this soon. I did a video a couple of years ago. There are, 8 stages, let's say. There's 8 things that you need to know or you need to show to get a job. High poly, right? You got to show a high poly. You got to show a low poly. You got to show that you know software. You got to show that you know texturing, right? And as you go down this process, there's different ways that you show you know something. If it's a high poly, people will look and say, let's say if it's a high poly face, then yeah, ZBrush is fine. But if it's a high poly in some kind of mech design, then if your high poly is inside a ZBrush and it's all sculpted, then that's just crap, right? You got to do it in Maya. So you got to know what your target is, and you got to understand what the threshold is. Now, let's take a look at texturing. If your texture is in ZBrush and it's poly painted, I love poly painting. I was there when it came out. I was part of the conversations, and we had, we made a decision. Ofer made the decision to focus on poly painting. I'm very proud of poly painting, and I'm proud of the time that I worked there at Pixologic and for whatever small contribution I had. Okay, but it's the low end of the totem pole. The higher end is substance. Mari. You're able to do those, you go up in value to employers, right? So if I'm looking at this work, I'm thinking in my mind, like, how does Kingston maintain his value to his employer, right? Kingston's got a job. He's probably happy. He's probably comfortable. He's like, okay, good. I'm glad I'm working. And I got this weird breeze coming in. But I'm looking at Kingston's and saying, need to find a way to maintain your value. More models like this. Many more models like this. Start doing substance. Start leveling this up, right? Don't stop. Don't stop. Keep moving. Keep growing. Keep, creating. So important to keep doing that. All right? So I don't need to review your art station. You need to review your art station. You need to learn what are the things that really need to be said. Is it in Marmoset? Where are you in the texturing pipeline? Where are you in the high sculpting, the high resolution pipeline? Are you establishing this correctly, or are you kind of phoning it in as a little bit of an amateur? Is your form proper, right? What's your software sophistication? Okay. It used to be, about a couple of years ago, I had to say if your software was in Blender, you weren't sophisticated, right? But I think that's a pretty naive thing to say today. There's huge advances. And then on top of that, there's also big people out there, big voices, I should say, really helping further the cause of Blender. And that's brought in a whole bunch of wonderful voices into this conversation and made Blender much more of a valuable commodity. You know, I used to say, well, you got to learn Maya or stuff like that. I don't believe that anymore, to be honest with you. But there is an element of software sophistication where if somebody's a Maya person, they look at Blender a certain way. But again, that was a couple of years ago. Now, the Maya people I know, they want to learn Blender, right? I mean, actually, the Blender sculpting tools are pretty damn good, you know, once you get over the UI. But I mean, ZBrush is great once you get over the UI. All right, have an amazing weekend, guys. I'm so glad that you're here. This is 3 hours. I cannot promise that I do this every week, maybe once a month. All right, this is pretty hardcore because I am desperate to sculpt myself and to keep growing and to create stuff myself. All right, have an amazing day, an amazing weekend. Let me know what is one thing that you learned down below. And remember, head over to GameArtInstitute.com. Where is it? I've got the face class right now. This is actually, enrollment gets serious next week because we're starting on a Saturday. I haven't done a live class in a long time. So if you want me to be critiquing your work and making comments on your stuff, man, make sure you head over here. This is going to be killer. It's actually, I haven't told people, but if you sign up for this, you're actually getting these 2 other classes that I'm doing, an anatomy one and a character one and all of that. I'm going to actually turn this into a big, huge game art thing on demand to some extent, kind of like these different little, you know, I don't know, like these little art camps, like what Noah does. So there's a lot in here. But then the other thing is, don't forget, we have the boot camp starting up in about a week and a half. And so if you really want to level up your work, you got 2 choices. You can come in here to the game art, you can come into the class. It's like $6.98. It's not a ton of money. Or, I mean, it is a ton, but relative to online classes, that's on the low end. Then there's the Game Art Bootcamp, which is twice a week, very intensive, very focused. That's a different deal, right? And that's if you graduated from college, if work is not where you want it to be, then you need to come over here and check this out and see what we can do here. There's some student work is over here. Here's Josh, Mohammed actually got a job over at Kios. Matthew Gilmeister is over there at High Res. Okay, Adam, awesome. Where are you at, Adam? 343? No, BioWare. I keep saying 343. Sorry, Adam. Jonathan Mercado was offered a job at Sucker Punch and turned it down. What the hell? God. Larry's over at Sony San Diego PlayStation. Okay. A lot of cool stuff going on. And Kenneth, where are you at, Kenneth? I don't think they've hired him yet. Yes, Bethesda. But they're idiots here pretty soon if they don't hire Kenneth. He's over there and they're taking advantage of him. Adrian just finished the boot camp. I'm just kidding about that. She just finished and she's doing amazing work. This is what it's all about for me, guys. The boot camp is kind of like my that's the thing where we go in and we work twice a week together to really grow. And Adrian's really a good example for me. I love seeing the growth that she's had. Here, let's see if we can look at the photos. Yeah, so Adrian, she did the first thing she did. I always have everybody start with a prop, right? That's the most important thing. And then it's not doing very good for me. Just doesn't show these images. But one of the things that was really just it was a really important evolution here is notice how in November 2nd, she's grinding on the skin. And by grinding, I'm referring to like the just the grind. This is the way I refer to it, is when you can work on a project for a week until then suddenly something shifts. Okay, and it takes a while. And so she's working on skin, and it just wasn't working, right? So I was like, okay, hand me this file. I got to do this. And figure this out. And so I went in and I looked, and this was about the level I got in the first little bit. And then we had to go in, and you can see like the mouth, these are too dramatic of folds. So we had to dial all that stuff down. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, she went from, let's say, November 2nd this is where she was. So let's just open that off in another thing. And then 1 week later, 2 weeks later. What the hell? Look at that. 2 weeks, folks. 2 weeks of being in the grind, and it's gotten better than this, right? She's added the transitional mesh for the eyelids. It's the eye shield. You can see it in there. That to this. That's if your work is here and you're not sure what's going on, you got to jump into the boot camp and you got to just make, we have to grind on it, right? And just, it's not enough to just go to an online class farm. You got to get in and really just spend some time and grow, and that's what the boot camp is for me. So here's her finished piece, and I couldn't be prouder of her for this. This is just a beautiful piece, and it's more than just that face, man. I mean, that clothing was like amazing from day one. She did some amazing stuff with that clothing. I just love that frayed edges in there. Pretty cool stuff. All right, guys, let's take a look. Make sure that there's no comments that I need to refer to. Hey, Ben. Yeah, definitely. And I think Facebook's going to kick me off. Cool. All right. Have an awesome weekend, guys. Take care. All right. Ciao.